You don't like that?
Yeah.
So, good deal. Good to see you.
No.
All righty.
Your note down, okay?
Well, good evening and welcome to the Hartland Township Planning Commission. Just a second here, guys. We're going to get going. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Hartland Township Planning Commission meeting of July 27th, 2017. We'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sue, would you take roll for us, please?
Sure. Chairperson Larry Fox.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Jeff Newsom. Absent. Secretary Keith Voigt. Joe Kalani. Myself here. Michael Mitchell.
Here.
And then Tom Murphy.
Here.
All right. Thank you, Sue. Next up would be approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved.
If they could hear us in the back, could you turn the volume up in the room?
Support.
We'll speak louder, but they'll turn the volume up also. So we have a motion to approve our agenda from Commissioner Mitchell, second from Commissioner Murphy. Are there any changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. So guys, tonight when we talk, speak right in to the mic. Next up is our call to the public. The full house tonight, and we have we actually have three agenda items. I'm sure most of you are here for probably two of them. Neither of these items or any of the items tonight are a public hearing. So what that means is you have two opportunities to speak this evening. One is going to occur here in about 30 seconds, and the other one is going to occur at the end. During the applicant's time at the table, when we're talking with them and the commission and our planning director, we're not entertaining topics or questions from the public themselves. So you'll want to get that taken care of now if you would like to add anything that is considered before we bring those individuals up. The second thing that we have is, it's not a requirement, but you would help us greatly in getting accurate meeting minutes. You do not need to fill one of these out to talk, but we have them on the table over on the side. They may be on the podium also. The only reason we're asking you if you would please spell out your name is that some names are harder to pick up on tape, and our minutes, we'd like them to be accurate and spell your name correctly. So if you can fill this out, that would be greatly appreciated. There's a box on the podium. You're welcome to either come to the podium if you prefer to stand, or you can take a seat at the table. So what I'd like to do at this time is open the call to public, and we'll just go in an orderly fashion. I'm sure a few of you would like to speak. If we could keep it at reasonable length, because we do have a big group here tonight, that would also be appreciated. So would anybody like to talk?
Yes, I think there's quite a few of us that are concerned. But I would first like to thank Mr. Lansing for meeting with us and for being very open about his plans. I do think he sincerely recognizes the character of this land and he wants to keep it, nice. But this property has some severe problems that I didn't see come up in your impact statement. Some problems that could be very damaging to the pond if not taken into consideration by the Planning Commission. Excuse me, when this site came before the Planning Commission in 2003 and 4, the Planning Commission and the county agencies that you send your, questions to had many limitations and many concerns. I almost think that's why Mr. Johns and Mr. Weber took off and gave up. Those concerns include steep slopes over 30%, especially on what we call the peninsula, that, part that sticks out. Tree removal, vegetation removal, the road length, and at that time they were concerned about no landmark tree identification. Well, I compared the plans for Mr. Lansing's development with some plans I still had for Weber's development, and I don't see that much difference. And so, yet in your documents, I don't see any of these concerns listed, or at least not in detail. But the issues of the area are as follows, that at least my opinion. There are very steep slopes, especially on that peninsula area. And there's wetland, water quality issues, silt, and a rare ecosystem. The steep slopes create a perfect storm for runoff. I mean, if trees are cut, it's just going to, those are sandy soils, and it's just going to go whoosh, right down into the water and right into the wetland. I don't know if you guys have been over there and looked at it, but you'd be amazed at how steep this one slope is. And it is probably the main and the most beautiful part of this land. The soils were identified as sandy and unstable back in 2004, and I have some minutes if you want to see them, or if maybe you've already looked at them. But our association, our Parsonsville Association, has been testing the water since 2008, because in 2007 the township did a study of the water quality, and it was pretty bad. I mean, it's not horrible, but it's problematic. So every year we've been testing it. We've gotten some professional help from a professor in Saginaw and some other help. We still don't know where the problems are coming from, but frankly, the pond is getting worse. It's covered with algae now. It's covered with weeds. We can hardly get up to the culvert. We can hardly get all the way through the pond, excuse me, up to the culvert in a canoe or a kayak, because it's so shallow, because the silt is building up on the bottom. We do still have fish, but we're a little worried about this. A hill of 27 new lawns, this could put a lot of fertilizer into that water. And it's already getting messy and ugly, and this could even put off Jack Lansing's new customers. I mean, they've got, wow, you know. And then if there's leaking septics, it's just going to add to it. As far as the wetland assessment on the impact statement, it says that there's nothing planned for the wetland. In other words, there's no impact. But, I mean, that's just not a thorough evaluation, in my opinion. If you go over there and look at the situation, you can see. I'll try to make this shorter. I'm almost done. The other vulnerable asset is the existence of a rare, or at least a remnant of a rare ecosystem called an oak savanna and some pre-settlement prairie. Those used to cover most of Michigan, but now they're only 0.02% of their original range. Sarah Thomas, a board member of the Livingston Land Conservancy, walked on this land and identified this ecosystem, and I think she's coming here tonight, so if you have any questions. But in addition to the erosion issues, the wetland and rare ecosystem, the parcel has wildlife in abundance. A bald eagle, sandhill cranes, a beaver lodge, blue herons, turtles, and a lot more. The engineer's impact statement mentions none of this. So what I'm getting at is I really beg you guys to do an environmental impact statement. I don't see how we can move ahead with this. Not we, but Mr. Lansing can move ahead on such a crucial parcel. An environmental impact statement was done in 2002, but the conditions on the pond and even on the land have changed. And I've seen this Planning Commission request or require environmental impact statements on parcels that are not as vulnerable as this. So I think if you have an environmental impact statement, what I would love to see is that it would help the Planning Commission to guide and help Mr. Lansing to guide how he might configure his lots. I mean, we're not here to say you can't build there, because he can. But we just want it to be done right. And it would be one way to solve all of this, in my humble opinion, is to have a PUD, or what I think you now call a PD, so that there can be open space where it's indicated, and cluster the houses. I don't mean real close, but cluster the houses away from the fragile places. If you can't approve such a PUD, maybe you can help him get in touch with wording for covenants. Because once he's left, I mean, he wants to make a good development. But once he's gone, what's to guide those people about what they can and cannot do? And if they start clear cutting on those slopes, it's a disaster for the pond, and ugly. But anyway, I think you'll hear from the neighbors that this waterfront and the pond are an essential part of our village. Your zoning and comprehensive plan recognizes our unique character because it created the STR district. And the pond is what this village has been about since 1837, and we'd like to keep it as nice as we can. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to be if we could come on up, if we could get your name and address, Eleanor, we'll get yours. We'll get yours from you
In the box, too.
In the box, perfect. Thank you very much.
8235 Parsheville Road.
All right.
Welcome, sir. Eleanor, you're too short. I'd like to start out with a joke that Pope John Paul told, trying to explain that Polish jokes weren't always nice, and he gave an example. And his joke was this: how many Americans does it take to screw in a light bulb? His answer was 5. 1 to do it, 4 to measure the environmental impact. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. This time, it's zone CNA, and this time the concern is conservation. Took a look at some plans, and I think the density is a little thick for that area. In particular, lots 4, 5, and 6 are perilously close to the wetlands, and we're talking about putting a septic field in there. I don't know if there's been any discussion at all about extending the sewer system to service that area. That would relieve some. You also have a proposed roadway, asphalt. Now, even though concrete and asphalt, as far as environmental impact on new installation, are just about neutral, in that particular area with watershed issues, now we're talking about carcinogenic material and genetic mutation. Now, we do have an eagle. We're very proud of that, and he, imagine, eats the fish. And there's people that fish downstream, and we're talking about some serious issues when the proposed asphalt breaks down. So I would like you to consider concrete. Actually, I would prefer that you put in gravel, but I don't know if you can sell high-end homes on a gravel road. But concrete would definitely be a consideration. And there's some things that we would like to do. Yes, I'd like to renew and support Eleanor's request for a wetlands impact study. That definitely has to be done, because we don't know what kind of damage we're going to do, and sure, the impact study might not tell you exactly with great accuracy, but it's going to give you a tool to predict what's going to happen. And I'm sure that you're concerned with that too. I would definitely like to see the number of houses cut down. 27 septic fields leaching into that environment. It's not a good situation. And there would be some things that I would like you to agree to. Simple things. We would like to have access to the property when the project's ongoing. I don't want to be trespassing, but then again, I don't want you and the community to be victimized by contractors that are violating the law. So there's a lot of places around here where they just decide to dig a hole and bury the junk. I would like us to have access to the property before, so we can photograph what we have, during, and after. And it would be nice to have a contact number from you, that if you do allow us to go and view the project, and I'm not talking about standing around and hugging the trees, I'm just talking about uninvasive observation. If we see a contractor or a practice that's not good, we'd appreciate being able to give you a call and having you react to that. I do believe a lot of people I talk to say, yes, you bought the property, the development's probably going to be here, but we want to work with you and we'd like to see what you would do to facilitate what we'd like. Just in the area, because you really are changing this very bucolic area, this farmland and neighborhood, and you're transforming it.
Yes.
And, and that's what people, of course, we don't want to raise a drawbridge, but we'd like to work with you, and we would like to see you have something really super if you're going to do it. Of course, if we all had our wishes, you'd just leave and donate it to the township, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Next. Good evening. If we could get your name and address,
Hi.
please.
My name is Crystal Castle, and I live at 5850 Cullen Road in Parshallville, and I'm here to talk about the planned Miller's Knoll development. I want to make it clear that I am not against this development. I understand that development is sometimes necessary. I've studied environmental science and sustainable construction at Wayne State University. I'm a LEED accredited professional and a member of the U.S. Green Building Council Detroit Regional Chapter, so I understand sustainable development. I'm here today to point out a few things that may not be on the radar of both the township or the developer, and those are mainly the biodiversity of the wildlife on the pond and the potential impact that a development may have on said wildlife. You may not know, but the pond is home to a number of species of migratory birds, which fall under the protection of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918. And there are species of bird that have been sighted on the pond that are either federally protected or considered endangered by the state of Michigan, namely bald eagles and osprey. I'm asking that the Planning Commission request the developer to do a more in-depth ecological impact study that includes the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, the EPA, and the Michigan DNR to help mitigate any disturbances to wetlands, nesting grounds, or habitat loss to shorebirds. I would stand behind any development that was built with integrity and that took protection and conservation of both our precious natural resources and wildlife into serious consideration in the planning process. Perhaps the developer will be willing to grant a conservation easement to protect the wildlife along the edge. Another concern that I have that I don't even think is on the radar of most people is regarding the property values and tax assessments. Once a development of this magnitude goes in, our property values and therefore our property taxes will go up, and I'm just concerned about what that's going to actually do to our property taxes. Aldo Leopold, considered by many to be the father of wildlife ecology and the United States wilderness system, once said, "We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect." I hope that you take my comments into consideration. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Anyone else? If we could get your name and address, please.
My name is Gerald Dankhouse. I live at 8324 Parshallville Road, and I've got a big concern. My property, as is my family's property, my other brothers and my other sisters and that, and brother-in-law, survey was done. I wasn't informed of what was going on. I have survey tapes going across my property, but one point of the property, which is the other end where the other boundary line is, was never marked. I have no idea if that survey was correct. I was informed by my deceased father that the property line didn't go straight. It went in a little ways. And I think my brother was there, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know if it's correct. Nobody informed me a survey was going on. I've heard it from people across the pond. My other neighbors saying, "Hey, they're surveying over by your property." Nobody said nothing. I don't think this is right. I don't know if the property survey is correct along that water line. Because there's another spot where there's a wetland that's partly on my property. They got survey tape going out almost to the end of this little wetland in a straight line. That's not the property line. The property line goes on a diagonal. I know. I sold the 5 acres that these gentlemen bought to this other lady, and her son was going to build there. So I know where the lot line, I know where all the property lines are. And my concern is, I'm not sure because I wasn't informed. And another thing that I don't think anybody realizes, as of myself, I grew up there. And a lot of people don't realize about the pond. I don't think you want to swim at that end of the pond, because you won't get out. All that area in that corner of that swamp, and a ways down towards the pond, is all muck and springs, natural springs. You get in there, you won't get out. So they're thinking about putting any kind of a rowboat. That's fine, but they're trying to do anything. Have people out there. That's going to be dangerous because that's all muck land in there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm Roy George, live in Tyrone Township, 9094 Dean Road. I got 20 acres plus, 2 10-acre parcels right across from 8325 Parshall Road, right next to Jerry almost. He sold that 5 acres in the back. What I'm concerned about right now is I've got the back 10 acres that are landlocked. Okay, half, there's supposed to be a cul-de-sac to go back there, okay, whenever it's developed or whenever I want to develop or sell it to the kids or whatever. And part of that road going back to the cul-de-sac is a 70-foot radius is supposed to come off this gentleman's property, whoever you represent there for that project, okay? I know you got a road going in, but, you know, that's my option right there is to use, and I've got it all registered with the county. Everything's been registered since 1991. That's when I got the property. Yeah, I got one, Jerry. Thank you. I know what. Yeah. And I'm concerned about that. That's the main thing, you know. I got a piece of landlocked property. You're going to leave me hanging out there where I got to put a right-of-way through my other front 10 acres. I don't think it's right. And this, you know, there's my sister-in-law lives down right next to me there. She's got another 10 acres there. She's got a pond that's spring-fed. It runs underground through the back end of my property and into the property these gentlemen are developing. Okay? And there could be a problem in there as far as elevation on her pond. Okay? And there's one thing I'd like to say. I wish, you know, we live in Tyrone Township. You know, I get taxes in Hartland Township twice a year regularly. Okay? People I hear get water bills, sewage bills, but it sure would be nice to get a notification in the mail for just the price of a stamp about meetings going on like this, where it involves a lot of people. You think it doesn't, but it does. And appreciate this lady back here for doing her work and letting me know about it, because I wouldn't have known about it at all. You know, I don't come up this township, I'll pay taxes, pretty much it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening.
Could we get your name and address, please?
George Bracco, 10102 Ridge Run in Howell, Hartland. Here with a couple comments over the Hunter's Ridge development, and some of the comments are going to be on the development proposal that they're going to be working, or you're going to be working off of tonight. And one of the big issues for us that live there now is there's no proposal or there's nothing in any of the writing that we've been able to see that protects our roads. It is a private road, so if it's damaged, it's up to the residents to repair. And as far as what we've seen and in our meetings with MJC, we haven't been able to get a commitment that if there's damage done to the road during this expansion, construction for 1 to 2 or 3 years, who's going to be responsible for fixing our roads? We obviously are a small community, and to take that burden on ourselves, it's one of our major concerns with the development. And we were hoping that maybe the construction traffic could go through where I think down the road there was plans of Chase Drive going right out to M59. And if that could have been developed for the construction traffic, that would alleviate a lot of our concerns and a lot of heavy trucks going over our roadway. I don't know who exactly owns the property between the development and the road at M59 there, but that would ease a lot of our concerns as far as damage and who's going to pay for it at the end, or if the township can impose something that says damage done to the road is going to be the responsibility of MJC, so when they're done with this project, they have to put it back to the condition where it's at now. A couple other things that came up on the map that I believe you're going to be working off of tonight. The name of the road, I'm hoping it's just a spelling error, but on your map it's Briar Ridge Road, and for the past 12 years it's been Ridge Run. So we're hoping somebody's not going to change the name of the road on us because there's a new development that would change all of our mailing addresses. And in part of the package tonight, I believe it was on package 46, there was even a comment about the traffic that your attorney was examining the master deed language to determine if there was an access concern. And we believe that's part of our same concern is the traffic, and even at the conclusion of this development, there's potentially going to be up to, if there's 2 cars per unit, that's almost another 180 cars going in and out of one enter and exit. We have the small loop that cuts into the back of Target, but that really doesn't give people a way in or out of the community. And a development that full size, when it's completed, it's just going to be too many cars for the small entrance that we have that goes on to Old 23. So if I don't know what the township attorney found when he looked into this, but it was noted in the package for tonight's plan to look into that. Another thing, we were recently sent a copy of the First Amendment, which is going to cover the property rights as when this development proceeds. I'm not sure at what point that will be presented to the township board or to the county. And there was they had a lot of stats in the First Amendment, what they're calling First Amendment to the Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, Restrictions. There's a lot of numbers wrong. They don't have the right number of units in the complex that's there now. And we recently hired a lawyer to look into this because we felt there was a lot of verbiage in here that just wasn't fair to us, including the spot where it says that it's been voted on and approved. We have not voted. We have not seen this until last week. So none of the community members that live there have voted and approved this verbiage. We, like I said, starting last week, we just seen this, and our attorney just started looking at it. So I would like that something like this doesn't get adopted until we've had time to at least look at it and agree to it, because it's really written one-sided that would benefit them and not us, and that's quite a big issue for us. I know there was something else I was going to bring up, but slipping off the top of my head right now. If you could address the traffic issues and the road concern issues that we have, I think that would go a long way in easing some of our concerns. And I'll turn the floor over. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Next. Thank you.
My main concern...
You could get your name and address
My name
first.
is Jim Goik. I own the property at 8019 Parshallville Road.
Okay, thank you.
And my main concern, like most of the people here, is that we were not notified of any of this. And it seems like we're quite a ways along in the process. And this is about the Miller's Knoll project. And as you know, the Township Board has final approval and should represent the community and not just the builder's bottom line. And if you can get by all of the rest of the things that have been talked about here today, I believe the plan still has major faults that have not been addressed or looked into for the people that already live there. And those would be setbacks, which are 15 feet on a side yard, which should be changed to 100 feet for the first two lots off of Parshallville Road, because that's what homes that front that road have to be. The other things are, I don't see any green belt areas to buffer the development from existing properties. 100 foot with trees and vegetation would be appreciated. With respect to the ITE 7th edition traffic generation, I totally disagree with their conclusion. I mean, I don't know how they come up with that. But you have 37 homes that are currently on Parshallville Road from Clyde to Linden. Most of them down towards Linden where the road is paved, be it poorly. But you're going to add 27 new homes, which is an increase of 75%. And they want a variance to come out to a gravel road, which I don't think is fair to the people that live there, because this road does not last through grading cycles as it is right now without the 27 new homes. And if you take into consideration that Hartland residents pay a road tax now to subsidize the county on maintaining our roads, it's insane to give a variance for him not to pave Parshallville Road, at least to his project, to take the maintenance out of that portion of the road. And I don't believe let me say I'm skipping a page here. And that would be, I believe it's section 5.22 where the zoning ordinances calls for it to come out to a hard surface road. And I think regardless of how many other subdivisions that he has listed that have come out to a gravel road, it's not a time to do that anymore. It's time to enforce this ordinance as it's written. And also in section 5.22, roads over 600 feet, as per the fire marshal's letter, he recommends an alternative of fire suppression systems in those homes to completely eliminate the access road on the other end, which we all know is going to turn into a real road and a development continues sooner or later. So I would like to avoid that altogether. And if you go by the fire marshal's alternative recommendation, you could eliminate that road by having fire suppression systems in the new homes. The exterior lighting, I think, should be required to be directed downward and not upward. No dusk to dawn lighting, because we don't want our night sky polluted. It's beautiful the way it is. That's why we live here. And I don't understand the comments that say to be determined when it's talking to homes and home sites, because it says there are no homes shown at this time. And are they not shown because they're not condos, or are they homes disguised as condos? Because usually a condominium development is, here they are, pick one or two, three or four, and we'll build it for you. And I don't believe the DPW or your engineering department did a thorough review of Parshallville Road, because as stated earlier, it doesn't last through grading cycles, and during winter melt or rainy days, that road floods. And it floods all the way down to Clyde Road from the top of the hill where my property is and Huskinson's right across the street from me. So I guess if you can get by all of these other issues, these issues I would like taken care of in the original site plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brenda West. I live at 10122 Ridge Run Street. This concerns the Hunters Ridge, Fox Ridge. In the packet that I copied off the website, under the site descriptions, there are a couple mistakes. The initial phase of construction is not 7 buildings. We have 6 buildings. We don't have a clubhouse. It's considered a pool house. And under the DPW report review, item 7, I would like the development envelope defined, and the map, I think, that MJC might be presenting tonight has a couple mistakes in it as far as Fox Ridge 2's building numbers. So if you could take that into consideration tonight, we'd appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Catherine Peters. I live at 10250 Crossview and also in Fox Ridge. And I'm just here to iterate that we only have 54 units. If you guys remember, this was a project that was supposed to be a large one, and it ended up, because of the housing, stuff like that, it came down to 54 units. When we were just 54 units, we only had half full. We were left with over $100,000 in bills that the bank helped us pay, as well as the builder just let us have. And we dug ourselves out of that hole. We are very protective of our community. We have tried very hard to keep it to be very nice. What we're mostly worried about is all the construction that's coming through, and that our roads that we always have to pay for will get ruined. And then we're stuck with it. With that first declaration, it states in there that Fox Ridge, as in us, is going to be responsible for a lot of those roads and sidewalks that we will not even have part of. So we are just concerned. We know the development is coming through. Our concern is just making sure that everybody stays even, that we live a happy life. This is going to be 2 condo associations impact into the same area. We had asked possibly that the building color would be just slightly different, because these are going to look exactly like ours. We do have a pool. Now, we have spoke with MJC. They've talked with us and everything like that, and it was decided that we are not letting Hunters Ridge get into our lot of our pool. Okay? I am worried that people are going to think, because they all look alike, that they belong to the pool. And that's going to cause what I consider problems later on in life. Okay? We'll deal with them. Okay? But our main concern are the sidewalks and the roads and the construction that's coming through. We are looking just to make sure that we're fair for both sides of the fence. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
My name is Jeffrey Castle. I live at 5850 Cullen Road in the Parshallville community. I'm here to discuss the Miller's No proposal that's been addressed here quite a few times this evening. At this point, all the notes I've taken, there's not much I can say that is new, I think, for the discussion. I'm here to make sure that you recognize the community is coming forward and saying, hold on a second, we need to take a good, strong look at this. Because as was mentioned already tonight, it seems like this proposal has been pushed through quite quickly. There wasn't a lot of mention of it, and until I think last Friday, there was really nothing up on even the Hartland Township website about it until we saw the agenda packet for this evening. The one area I think we should mention, though, is that the 92 acres in question here is a cornerstone, I feel, for the community when it comes to the natural habitat, the nature of Parshallville. There is very few areas within our community that you don't have visibility of this parcel that they're willing to put 27 houses on. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm anti-development. I think it's fantastic. But as we grow the community, I think we need to identify the areas that really need to be protected. There's, as mentioned quite a few times, the habitat in the area is fantastic. The amount of birds that come in at night, the deer, the beaver dam that's down there, the bald eagle sightings. I mean, it's just absolutely fabulous. And I think we need to hold up and take a good, strong look at what is there, what we want to keep, and what we're willing to give up. Okay? We have a wonderful cider mill every year. It's open for a few months, and that view is of this wonderful piece of property. We really need to protect that water's edge from somebody wanting to, I don't know, see the water. I think that there needs to be some protection there on the trees. It is a steep hill there right at the water's edge. There is a big problem with the pond right now. I was kayaking in it 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't even make it to the property. I'm not a heavy guy. I got stuck about 15 feet out. I couldn't even get there. So there is an issue there. And when you put up, I'm understanding some nicely developed homes, those nicely developed homes are going to want to have nice pieces of property, and nice pieces of property need fertilizer. And so I think that needs to be something. If you keep a natural edge there, that's going to help keep that out of our pond, keep our pond looking nice, or as nice as we can as we try to figure out what to do there. So I implore you this evening to really listen to the community, and please come out and see the property. Drive around the pond, and you can see just how much of it is visible. And try to understand from the community's eyes what's at stake here with this proposal. Again, it's their property. They're able to develop it. I think it's nice that we're going to have a new development there. But let's protect what we can and make sure that it's done right. And please, as one gentleman mentioned, the traffic survey, drive that road. At certain parts, it's so narrow. It's paved north of the property. It's paved, but it's in terrible condition. It's extremely narrow. We have a landscape company taking big trucks up and down there. You can barely get 2 cars through. And to be honest, I doubt. I'm guessing that their survey had the people in the homes going down to Clyde Road and over to the expressway, which is definitely a main way to go. But most of us also travel north towards the Fen, and that's where you get into problems. So please take a look, come out, visually see what we're talking about before you make any plans to move forward with this with a developer. And as a community, let's work forward to really making something spectacular there and making sure that everybody is pleased with the outcome. Thank you for your time this evening.
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Al Hirschman. We own the property directly across the street from this proposed development on Parshallville Road. Several years back, I guess it was 2003, I spoke to you about the proposed development at that time, which was 21 homes. About a year and a half later, they came back with 23 homes. All along, they never met the water runoff issues, the fact that the property had to be covered for a 100-year flood. That road does wash out because it washes onto my property. So I'm really concerned that we don't take any more water across Parshallville Road than we already do. I don't think there's enough retention in this current plan, and definitely think that the density is way too much. It seemed at the time the commission agreed that 21 homes was a lot. They're talking about some very expensive homes. I, for one, I have almost 20 acres across the street. All of the properties around there are acreage, 10 acres at least. There are a couple of 2-acre homes there, but I can't imagine people building $500,000 homes on 2 acres. It seems like ridiculous to me. So I want that taken into account. And then the fact that 27 properties, average people, couple cars, kids with cars, we're going to have another 50 to 70 cars trying to get out of Parshallville Road onto Clyde. I've already had to sit there for several minutes with the traffic coming down Clyde. Since it's now paved to Latson, there's now an exit off of 96 on Latson. Clyde Road has turned into a thoroughfare for an awful lot of through traffic, not residents, people that are cutting off the corner getting from 96 to 23 North. And that's an awful lot of traffic that's going to come out on a road that, yes, is already stressed. The very end of the road, Eric Priest brings a lot of his construction traffic out of there, but he also takes care of the road down there. So who's taking care of the road? The Road Commission. And yes, it does not survive from grading to grading before it turns into a washboard coming across certainly our property and anybody that has to drive by us. So I'm really concerned about that, but I think the density more than anything is what's really at issue here. Why can't there be development? Sure, but decent-sized properties. People that want horses have to have at least 5 acres, I believe, in the township. And all these 2-acre parcels just don't make sense to me. Other than that, I agree with everything else people have brought up, obviously being informed when things like this come up. In the past, we've always gotten notification when there's been a plan afoot that adjoins our property or is in reasonable proximity to us. And again, nothing happened this time around. So I would appreciate notification in the future about these kind of things. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'd just like to add, do we have any new additional comments to add? I know a lot of us are supporting one another. A lot of you are supporting one another in the comments. But we've also got 3 agenda items. We don't want to cut your time short, but if we have new items to bring forward, that would be a great thing to do at this time.
It's kind of new.
Kind of new. All right. Good deal.
I'm Mike Zatruck. I live at 10117 Ridge Run. I'd like to speak in regards to the construction access as well. I really wish that MJC and the Planning Commission would consider finding access off of the M59 corridor instead of coming through our neighborhood for safety and for construction damage. I'd also like the Planning Commission and MJC to consider an alternate entrance to Hunter's Ridge off of Old 23, maybe farther to the north, where they could have their own entrance separated from ours, and it would probably aid in life safety and fire safety for the whole campus or neighborhood, whatever you want to call it. So.
All right. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Marla Rowe Gorash. I've been on Cullen Road at 5960 for 10 years. So I agree with Jack Lansing. This is the jewel of Livingston County. The area is phenomenal and was the reason that I moved in. I like the fact that there are no motorboats and that the water is left to work on itself, although it needs lots of help, as Eleanor mentioned. One of the things I'd like to do in terms of something new is invite you to envision something that goes beyond what we've ever seen built before. I think Lake Shannon started my interest in this area and that community that's been around for over, how many, 40, 50 years? Basically seen as a bedroom community of the GM and the Ann Arbor area for those who appreciate the quiet, the natural resources, but they have made a mistake as well. They've allowed sod, they've allowed phosphates, they've allowed clearing of the natural area, so that there are some people who are not as appreciative of what the environment offers and what we're now seeing as a way of maintaining an ecosystem that's neutral to our area. Now, we have something that we need to steward here, and that's the oak savannas, which are very rare in the northern Midwest area. They are almost non-existent in Michigan as virgin areas, the oak trees. I would hope that those would be protected, as well as the Michigan prairies, which also appear to be one of the rarest in the entire North Midwest. So I'm not here I want you to envision something new and different. And I've looked around, and there are some streets around Lake Shannon, specifically Cliftwood Court and Ledgewood Drive. You guys have been here a lot longer than me. Okay, cool. And so the point is, there are areas in Ann Arbor that are working on creating developments that allow for, it's not open space, because I don't want a big sod park. I would like an area that allows for the natural movement of the water, the natural growth of the existing ecosystem, and then the trees and homes that are in there are beautifully set by those who can most enjoy them. And if they have the money to afford it, they'll find you and will help you find them. Okay? Thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brian Nolan. I live on 7961 Parcelville Road. I just moved in here a few months ago, and unfortunately I'm moving out this month. But the reason I came here is because I've lived in neighborhoods where similar developments happened, and the engineers did not know what they were doing, and there were major water issues as far as flooding, not of the development but of the neighboring houses. And my concern is that these townships would have had similar meetings like this, and they would be given this information that everything's going to be kosher, and it was a disaster, and it affected houses outside the development. So my concern is just, it's not going to affect me. Unfortunately, I'm leaving this community probably this month. In August. But I'm real concerned about and I've got friendly with some of the neighbors here, but I'm real concerned about the neighbors as far as, do the engineers know what they're doing? I don't think we should assume just because somebody comes up with a development that people actually know what they're doing. Also, I don't know if rules should be waived. Rules are there for a reason, and I don't think rules should be waived, whether it's access to the property, paving Parcelville Road, etc. I don't think rules should be waived. But my main concern would be how the engineering of this whole setup, and whether the people actually know what they're doing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good evening.
8425 Parcelville Road, Bob Conaway, and that takes care of Eleanor's giving her an address.
Thank you.
I want to take a different slant, and I want to follow up on what Marla just said. I've lived in Parcelville for almost 45 years. I've seen the deer go through my yard, through the cemetery. I have neighbors that have fished there, got pike out of there, huge. I've seen my son-in-law was fishing there, and a baby deer he flushed right along the water's edge. I've had neighbors that have hunted pheasant, quail, rabbits on that land. I've cross-country skied across that land. It has pathways where the animals have gone to water in that pond. They have nested there. They have grown their young there. And now there's a bald eagle there. What a precious piece of opportunity for you. I mean, you want to build some houses there, but you have a biosphere right there. If you can do something to help that habitat survive, you can use that in your website for selling those homes. You can use that eagle, but if you wipe out that habitat so that eagle is gone and the deer no longer can get through there because you've broken it up or there's fences or whatever, then you've lost your opportunity. I bet the copywriters are just waiting to write copy for your project and put a website on telling these people that are going to be looking for that kind of a place and have money and they want to live in a biosphere. I just would encourage you on the positive side to take a look at the golden opportunity. The other half of it is you're right near a historic village. Franklin Village is a very expensive area. Parshville is just like Franklin Village. There's a historic character. You can use that in your copy to sell those out. There is tremendous opportunity for you to really work with the community, do the plan unit thing, and preserve that kind of. You could even donate that to the Livingston County Land Conservancy. They would probably buy that land from me, so you wouldn't even have to worry about it. It would be a partnership. You could win an award, a state award for a project done the right way it should be done. That's what I have to say.
All right. Thank you. And anyone else? Okay. We do have a call to the public at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and close this call to the public, and we'll move on to our first agenda item, which is item 6A. This is site plan application number 17-006. This is the Miller's Knoll preliminary site condo phase of the process. I'm going to turn the floor over in a moment to our planning director, Troy Langer. He'll explain to you and introduce the project. We'll have the applicants come up after Troy gets done, and they can present anything they'd like. And then we also have a review letter, which many of you mentioned that you had read on site. On the website, and we'll be going through that review letter, and that'll be a discussion between the applicant, the Planning Commission, and our planning director. So at this point, the call to the public's closed, so there won't be any interaction at that point, but certainly a lot of the topics you brought up will come up, and you probably will hear a few new ones also. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn the floor over to Troy Langer, who is Hartland Township's planning director.
Thank you. Let me start out by using this aerial to kind of show where the property is. Somewhat on the bottom of this monitor here would be Clyde Road, and then in this area is Parshville Road that extends north, kind of bends in this location here on up into the settlement area at the north end of this pond. The property is here kind of outlined in this orange color. I think at one time it was described as being 92 acres. I think when the applicant actually did a survey of it, it was 66 acres, something to that effect. So the prior reference of it being 92 acres I don't think is exactly right. So this is the 66-acre portion, the main portion of the property. In addition to that, and I haven't highlighted it because on this aerial map I can only highlight one property at a time, but there's a second property in this area, somewhat triangular shaped here, that's about 5.3 acres that the applicant has as well. So combined between that piece and then the larger piece, it's about 71.5 acres of land. What I'll do now is show, this is an overall site plan of the proposed development. This being Parshville Road over here, and then this being the main entrance that extends in, works its way to the back. There's a cul-de-sac in this location, and then off of that is a shared driveway to here that serves those two lots, and then there's a shared driveway extending out, and then actually it goes further to become an emergency access out to Parshville Road again. So these two lots in the far back here would be served by the shared driveway as well. So this is the general layout of the lots, this being the Parshville Pond kind of on the eastern boundary of this property. The applicant has applied for what's referred to as a condominium development. It's a, I guess to keep it simple, it's a two-step process. There's a preliminary review, which requires Planning Commission review and Township Board a determination, and then there's a final review, which is essentially the same, Planning Commission review and then Township Board determination. So 4 steps in total, I guess. One, preliminary review by both Planning Commission and Township Board, and then two is the final review by both Township Board and Planning Commission. So that's the process that the applicant has applied for. With this, there's 27 condominium units. Although it's referenced as a condominium, I would probably note that this is laid out much like a platted subdivision. The condominium process is, the applicant is using the Condominium Act as the means to divide the property. The applicants indicated that they intend to build single-family homes, much like you'd find on lots like this somewhere else. This is not a true condominium development, such as the Fox Ridge development that's also on the agenda for later tonight. So with that as an overview of what the project is and the process, I'll leave it open for further questions or comments from the Planning Commission.
All right, I think what we'll do is we'll ask the applicant to come up and give us any information that you would like to add, and then when you're done, what we'll do is we'll have a discussion with the staff review letter.
Can I just make a comment before that happens? Just to be clear, Troy, this is the first time we've seen this at the Planning Commission.
This is
just like the rest of the people here, this is the first introduction that we have to this development. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, there were some comments about this seems to be pretty far along. This is the very first time that this request has come in front of the Township Planning Commission. Unfortunately, this request does not require any noticing, and we were consistent with what the ordinance calls for. And we try our best to get word out otherwise, but we were not obligated in this type of a request to provide noticing within 300 feet, much like other types of requests have.
Okay. All right, if you guys would like to introduce yourself, you have to speak into the mic so everybody can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David LeClaire with Livingston Engineering, and with me tonight is Jack Lansing, the owner. Is the microphone on?
Is the mic on? In the back room, can you turn it up?
I'll just say, you know what, the light is lit, but okay, is that better? Thank you. David LeClaire with Livingston Engineering, and with me this evening is Jack Lansing, the owner and developer of this property. And Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'll address the Planning Commission sitting down this evening. I understand there's an overhead projector that would be very helpful in some of the exhibits that we have for the Planning Commission tonight. So if it's okay, I would like to do that. Now, I also understand that the overhead camera zooms in and out, so I'll try to do this as best I can and speak as loud as I can so everybody can hear me this evening. I'm not sure if there's a focus on this.
That's a good question. Try bringing it in just a little closer, maybe cut the edges off, and let's see what happens. If not, we may go to your page. Can you just...
Sometimes if you zoom all the way in, it may have an autofocus to... that's as far as it goes.
Well, it'll go in further. It's just not going to, get the whole. This actually, this first exhibit is the same one that you had up, so we could start with that one. I do have a couple others that I would like to utilize for that I don't think the township has.
Yeah, we'll just flip between the two, Troy. Yep, perfect.
Okay, as Troy discussed, we are here tonight asking for preliminary site plan approval for Miller's Knoll. Again, as discussed, this is a 27-unit site condominium, a typical single-family housing development on this 93 acres. The 93 acres does contain some submerged lands. That's the difference between the 93 acres and I think what was described as 73, 60-some acres prior to. The land it is owned out to...
Are you working there?
Apparently mine has a dead battery.
Here you go. There we go. You're welcome.
Okay. What Jack actually owns is out to the center line of Partialville Pond. So that's the difference of the submerged land, which is really unusable land. However, he does own out to the center of the pond. So that's where the difference in that comes from. The property currently zoned conservation agriculture, master plan for state residential. Those requirements have a 2-acre minimum with 200 foot of frontage, which we do have on all of these 27 lots. As Troy had mentioned, our main access does come off Partialville Road. We have a road that's about 3,600 feet long, terminates in a cul-de-sac with 2 shared driveways to service these 2 parcels up on the pond, and then these 3 parcels that have an access out to Partialville Road. The eastern portion of the development does abut Partialville Pond. One of the things that was not mentioned is there is no lake access, no launch or no boat access with this development. The lot owners that abut the pond would have the same rights as the other people on the pond. So whatever is allowed by township and state ordinances is what they would be allowed to do. We are proposing 1 dock for fishing. It's just a temporary seasonal dock. It's at the end of an open space walkway in this location. It is a seasonal dock, does not require a permit from the DEQ. It would be put in the spring, pulled out in the fall for residents that live on the 27 units if they want to go out and cast a line. So that is really the only DEQ activity where we're encroaching on the wetlands. We are not direct discharging any stormwater runoff into the wetlands. We do have several detention basins. Most of them are upland. There's one in this area. There's one down in this vicinity, another one here, and one up in the northern area of the development. Those basins will all have standpipes which treat the stormwater prior to them discharging upland of the wetland line. So that is how the stormwater will be handled. I would like to reference, if I could, the previous site plan that was done, as far as I can tell, between 1998 and 2004. I'm not familiar with why that project stalled or what some of the issues were.
I have that up here for you.
Do you have that one as well?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is the development that was done sometime between 1998 and 2004. It was called Mill Pond Place at the time. That development had 23 lots in it. The one that we're proposing tonight has 27. The biggest reason for the difference is that Mr. Lansing acquired an additional 5 acres that was mentioned by the township planner up in this area. So that's where the additional lots come from for this development. We do have a shorter road in our development than this one had. This development had about 4,100 feet of road to the terminus of the cul-de-sac. Ours, if you recall, the cul-de-sac terminates back here and has a shared drive to service these 2 lots and also the lots on the adjoining 5 acres. My understanding is that this development did receive preliminary site plan approval from the township. I do have construction plans for it. I know it went that far. I don't think those were ever approved by the township. And also in talking with the Livingston County Health Department, they do have an approved hydrogeo report for water supply on this development. So there were test wells put in the development. The water supply was approved. Also the on-site septics were approved for this development for the 23 lots. The road commission at that time also approved the entrance for the development out onto Partialville Road. We are keeping this entrance in the exact location that it was prior to for the 98 development. So some of the differences between the previous development and ours, one, as I mentioned, the old one had 23 lots. We have 27 lots. The old road was 4,100 feet to the cul-de-sac terminus. We're at 3,700 feet. The old plan had an outlot. One of the things discussed in the current proposal is the length of the road, and that was also an issue back in the late 90s, early 2000s when the previous development was proposed. At that time, they had an outlot right in this area to service any future road extension and provide a second possible access out to Parshallville Road. With the new development, Troy, if you could go back to the current one. One of the big differences in this development, the location for the old outlot was right in this area right here. One of the things that we have done is we've pushed that road, this road here, up to the very northerly property line. There is no longer, I think there was a 20-foot area, space in this area that was an open area. We decided to push this road up to the property line, and the biggest reason for that was to allow as much room as possible for these home sites to get them the opportunity to get farther away from the pond. This does offer an alternative for a future access point. The ordinance does discuss some alternatives to the road length, one of them being an outlot, which was done in the previous development. Another one is a continuous property line where the road goes along a property line, which is what we have here. So literally, this road could be extended anywhere along this area under this scenario, which is another way of allowing a secondary means in the future at some point. The old plan was also done under a PUD. We're asking that this development be allowed to move forward under the conventional zoning. And there was some discussion in the open to the public call this evening about the PUD. And if we could go back to that plan. Again, you can see our plan is very similar to that. This plan was a PUD. There was some open space in it. However, similar to our plan, all of the lots along Parshallville Pond and the waterfront, there was no open space. There was an access area right here. We have something similar where we want to put our seasonal dock. There was some open space in here where there is a pond. We have a detention pond in that location also. The only difference is instead of being an open space, it's on a lot. So although we're not utilizing the open space zoning option that the township has, our plan is very similar to the open space plan that was approved by the township back in the late 90s, early 2000s. We did submit a landscape plan which meets the township ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on that. Another thing that we're not proposing is any outdoor lighting. The homes obviously will have some lighting on them. Would be happy to work with the adjoining neighbors. There was some discussion this evening, again, in the call to the public about light pollution, and that is something we'd be happy to address in the master deed and bylaws with the neighbors. There is 3 items, I believe, that are open for some discussion with the Planning Commission from your planner's letter. One being sidewalks in the development. We are not proposing sidewalks in this development. We strongly believe that this development, being in a rural area, is not conducive to sidewalks. These roads will be constructed with open ditches, which is also better for the on-site drainage. Somebody had mentioned earlier a gravel road. Although we're not allowed to do a gravel road by township ordinance for this many lots, we do feel that the open ditch scenario is a far better environmental alternative than a curb and gutter enclosed storm sewer option, which the previous plan fell under. The second is the road length. Again, I've discussed a little bit prior to the option that we have for a secondary access point, which is a means of overcoming that in the ordinance. Again, we have the area in this area where we can either designate a spot or that whole section could be available for a future road extension. Now, there was some comment from a gentleman this evening about a landlocked parcel. I'm not quite sure where that is. If we could go to our development plan, I'm thinking that this is maybe his 10 acres here. And if that's the case, he would have access all along here. The ordinance does describe and allow for that. I don't know how he accesses that parcel now. Maybe the shared drive, I'm not quite sure. Anyways, he would have access through that means. The other thing that we have on this plan is an emergency access. When Jack Lansing acquired this 5 acres, it did come with an emergency access. We do plan on putting in an access, a secondary fire access for the fire department should access be needed from a secondary means. That's a similar type scenario that we've done on other projects to the township. A couple years ago, I did a project called Woods Edge over on the east side of the township, and we had a secondary access road for that. Now, that is not a permanent road. There would be a gate out at Parshallville Road, similar to what we have on Maxfield Road for the previous development that I did. It would have a gate. It would have a Knox box on it. It would be locked. The association in their bylaws would be responsible for maintaining and plowing that road because it is required to be open year-round. But it is never intended to be a full-time road. Again, there's a lock gate there, and it's not technically an access point except for emergencies. And lastly, the ordinance talks about paved access. And like many of the roads that the township has, and I think several of them were described in the planner's letter, we do access onto a gravel road. And we would ask that the Planning Commission, allow this development to move forward under that scenario. Interestingly enough, Parshallville Road, the last traffic counts that were done on Parshallville Road were done in 2015. At that time, it had an average daily traffic rate of 190 cars for a 24-hour period. The one prior to that was done a couple years prior to, and it was around 210. So relatively a very low traffic count on Parshallville Road. That's about 8 cars per hour. I don't know what the split is, if it's 50-50, 4 in each direction on average. So our development is not going to significantly affect that. It may sound like it numbers-wise, but in reality, that road operates at level of service A currently and will continue to do so. The numbers in our traffic report do come from the Road Commission traffic counts, and they do come from the numbers that are recommended in the ITE trip generation manual. And those numbers are specific to left turns during the peak hour, which is what the township uses for an indicator as to whether or not a traffic impact study is warranted. Under that scenario, it requires 50 peak left turns into the development. We're far under that, even if we assumed 100% of the PM peak hours came from the north and turned left into the development. So in either of those scenarios, we're far under the indicators that would require a traffic study. If I could, I'd like to try to address some of the concerns that were brought up in the call to the public. There was some discussion about some steep slopes from one of the ladies that spoke, and it is true, there is some steep slopes on this property. Most of them happen to be this area up in here. There's some very steep, extreme slopes up in this area. One of the things we've done to help mitigate that, if you recall the previous plan, there was...
Did we lose another one? That's weird. We need some new batteries, Troy.
There we go. This one looks like it's got good batteries.
Yeah.
The previous plan, again, had a cul-de-sac up in this area. One of the things that we've done is pull that cul-de-sac back, which we feel is a better alternative to sticking that road way up on that peninsula. We do have a shared drive up in there which can be constructed without a lot of the horizontal and vertical constraints that a road would have, much more conducive to putting things in that are environmentally in an environmentally sensitive area, which this area is. Another thing that we did, as I had mentioned, is pull this road to the extreme north, again giving us the most room for these homes to be built along here, farthest away from the lake. Water quality, have done this in many developments, have put language into the master deed and bylaws that discusses the types of fertilizers that can be used on homes. We've done a lot of lakeside developments. Everybody has that concern that lives on the lake about phosphorus entering the lake. And we always put language in the master deed and bylaws for what types of fertilizers can be used to eliminate that issue. And we would be happy to work with the conservation people for that language so that everybody's in agreement with that. Septics. Right now on the plan, and we're still at the preliminary plan stage, but when this plan was done between 1998 and 2004, all of the lots did perk, and the perk locations we show on the site plan. As you can see, a lot of them are on the lakeside. As part of this development, at that time there was one perk done per lot. The current requirements with the County Health Department require 2 be done per lot. And I've had this conversation with Mr. Lansing, but we're going to go out and re-perk these lots, and we would prefer that all of the septics be on the road side of the development. So instead of being down on the lakeside, they would be up on the road. So when we come back for final site plan approval, we will have septics up along the road in all areas where the soils are suitable for that, to pull them as far away from the road as possible. And really the closest we're getting to the lake if I could just zoom in on this real quickly, I think I can maybe get close enough to it's still kind of hard to see, but this is a color drawing that represents the grading that we proposed on it. Because of the environmental sensitivity of this area, we did do a grading plan for this road that we're intending to build within the development. This drawing shows the cuts and fills on the property and the extent of the grading limits. And what it shows is to put the road in, these are the extremities of where we would need to grade to construct the road with open ditches as we are proposing. The closest that we're getting to the lake wetland, I put some dimensions on here, a little over 300 feet, 340 feet. The closest spot is up near this point where we've got to draw up in that area 130 feet. So again, some things that we've done to try to lessen the impact on Parshallville Creek and give the most opportunity to move them houses forward toward the road. I think I've addressed the emergency access with the Knox box being gated. The gentleman that was landlocked, now that I know where his parcel is, I think I've addressed that. There was some discussion about Oak Savannah. I'm not an environmental person by education. Jack mentioned to me a few days ago that somebody had authored a letter that mentioned Oak Savannah. I did do a little bit of research on it, and I did contact our environmental consultant who did the wetland delineation on this. He was not out there to specifically look at that. He was out there to flag the wetlands, so it had been 3 months since he'd been out there. It was his opinion, just from his recollection, that this site did not represent an Oak Savannah area. He did send me some maps. Again, if we could go back to the overhead.
I'm getting better at that.
Okay, so this map represents, it's circa 1800 map of Michigan that shows different formations within the state. If you look over on the right-hand side, Oak Savannah, mixed Oak Savannah is a category on that. We also blew that area up. If you go back to this map real quick, this box right here is our site. So it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. That's really hard to see.
There it goes.
There you go. Okay, so this is the Partialville Pond right there. Again, it's hard to see, but this pink color represents oak hickory forest, which I think is probably more characteristic of what the site actually is. This is a blow-up of that same map. Again, which shows this site in more detail. To the right-hand side of that box, you can see Partialville Pond. The land within that square on the left side of the pond is essentially our site. Again, if you go over to the key area on that, you'll see that mixed oak savanna is a category on this map. There are several areas in the county and even the township where there was some of that vegetation circa 1800. This area is not one of them. The correspondence back from our wetland consultant, and I'm just going to read some of this. What he says is Oak Savanna is a prairie-like fire-dependent community that was not previously known from this location if you go by the pre-settlement vegetation mapping, which is what I just displayed to you. If the historical land use of the property was pasture, it may still look like Oak Savanna, but would not have the herbaceous plant community that defines Oak Savanna. And in my visit from the site, and again, I'm not an environmental person, I'm not familiar with the Oak Savanna. The areas along the lake are heavily wooded. In my reading of the Oak Savanna documentation, my understanding is the savanna areas are 50% or less tree covered, with grassy areas underneath that are created by historical fires. Some of them are maintained periodically by generated fires. Again, I don't know that this area is really a historical oak savanna area based on this information. I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lansing is here this evening. Again, if you want to ask any questions of him, he is planning for this to be a high-end community in the township. Nice homes. It is a beautiful piece of property. Certainly not trying to destroy it, and would like to work with the community to create some of the safeguards that everybody is looking for. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
All right. So those of you that are new to our process here, the next thing we're going to do is we have a staff review letter that was written in regards to going through the site. It's going to highlight all the areas within the zoning ordinance that we need to make sure that we've taken a look at. So we're going to do that, and we have a staff review letter that is dated July 20th, 2017. And in our packet, it starts on page 2. Now, the first page or so is a basically summary of what the proposal is. So we're going to move on to packet page 3. And we're going to see about halfway down there's a topic or a paragraph heading general, and basically it's still just describing it as a single-family detached dwellings, principal permitted use in the CA district. So the conservation agricultural is the zoning designation, and we'll start out with the CA development standards. CA, when we say that, is conservation agricultural. So it's just the abbreviation or the acronym that we're using. Lot size for single-family detached dwellings in the CA district are a minimum of 2 acres. The proposal are lots ranging in size from 2 to 4.93 acres. So in the size of the lots proposed, they do comply. In the lot width for single detached family dwellings in the CA district, we have a minimum lot width of 200, and their lot ranges are 200 to 470 feet wide. So they would be complying with those particular dimensional requirements. There was a question brought up of not understanding why these TBAs. TBAs are decisions that are going to be made, or TBDs, time of development. And they relate to the homes and how big are the houses on the lot. And then the first one we're going to get to is the maximum lot coverage. And Troy, would you just briefly describe what lot coverage is?
Sure.
So lot coverage is the percent of the lot that could be covered with buildings, which would include the single-family home and any other accessory buildings that may exist on the property. That would include decks, and it would also include any paved or impervious surfaces such as the driveway, patios, sidewalks, and such. And that is limited. There's two provisions. If you are on a municipal sanitary sewer, it's a little bit higher. If you're on private septic, such as these are, your maximum lot coverage is 15% of your total lot area can be covered by those things.
Okay, so the to be determined, the reason it's to be determined is that each home will be different. It will have a different footprint. It will have a different size driveway. The maximum permitted lot coverage in this CA district would be 15%. So 15% of the lot could be covered by the house, the driveway, the deck, concrete around a pool, but a pool does not count.
That's right.
Okay, so, and those are always left open in all the developments we have. They are a guideline that is used when a home is presented to the township and a land use permit is evaluated. Setbacks, they have a front yard setback of 50 feet, a side yard of 15, and a rear yard of 50. That's another to be determined. Those are the guidelines, or what is left after you put that perimeter around that lot. That's the building envelope. They can work within that space. And so that is to be determined because each home will be different. Each lot is different in shape and in size. The building height, maximum 35 feet or 2.5 stories. Unlikely that will become an issue, but we do have that as a township rule, but that's another to be determined. Floor area, minimum on a one-story home is 1,200 square feet. 1.5 stories is 960 square feet. So to be determined, being high-end homes, most likely I think we're all going to guess they're over 1,200 square feet. Density and open space in the residential districts. I don't believe there's a standard or a minimum in this particular area. Is that correct, Troy?
That is correct. This isn't like an apartment complex. You would examine what the density is and dwellings per unit type of a ratio. In this type of development, each of these lots is at least 2 acres in area, so you're well under 1 unit per acre. I think it's like a 0.48 dwelling units per acre. Okay. Density, just so you know, but there's no requirement.
There's no requirement, there's no minimum, but they have the 71.5 acres or so, 27 home sites. Divide that out, you're about 0.4 acres.
Yeah, and we
took
we didn't count the submerged lands under the lake towards their density, right. So that's why we're using the 71 acres.
The traffic generation, I'm on the bottom of packet page number 4 right now, and I think that was brought up in terms of the amount of traffic that they generate. They're well under the requirements that we would require any type of traffic study to be done. So I'm over on packet page 5 now, the internal vehicular and pedestrian circulation. I guess we should probably talk about this in that you've brought up the concept of sidewalks in a development of this nature. They're not proposing any sidewalks. Are there comments in regards to sidewalks?
I don't believe they're required.
I almost think they would be more cumbersome with an open ditch, and certainly the country-type atmosphere I don't think lends itself to that. I think you're probably going to find people just walking along the side of the road. So we're okay without the sidewalk requirement. We do enter into, in that same paragraph, section 5.22 of the zoning ordinance, that the development is required to be connected to a hard surface road. Any comments, Troy?
I've got a few. One of the ordinance is fairly straightforward. So this connection that comes out here is supposed to tie into a paved road. The Partialville Road from in this area going all the way south to Clyde Road would be gravel or unpaved. What I did is provided a list of roads, and I'm going to show you a map of kind of where they're at, if I can get to it here. Where did I put that? There it is. Sorry about that. This is an overall township map. It's not very detailed. It just kind of shows streets. Just for reference, this would be 23 going north and south. This would be 59 going east and west. And what I've got in the blue are roads that are private roads that come out to a gravel road. What I was not aware of is when those were done, and I think I've learned since the staff memorandum went out that these were done prior to this adoption of the ordinance. So my reference in the staff report is identifying where these situations occur. I just wasn't aware of the date of those subdivisions in relationship to this ordinance, and I've since learned that those are all what you'd call pre-existing non-conforming situations. This situation is going to require the developer to examine paving that portion of Partialville Road.
And I guess my question would be, I don't believe we have the opportunity to deviate from that.
Yeah, there's no provision there that grants the Planning Commission the authority to waive that standard. The only potential option was if the past practice had been that, but I just, and that's why I provided this information to the Planning Commission as part of the packet. I just was not aware that that ordinance was adopted after these subdivisions had been approved.
So I seem to recall this issue coming up recently a few times, and I was under the impression that we had allowed for a private drive off of a gravel road, a shared drive like this. So I'm wrong about that then?
Well, your historical knowledge on what's been done is actually going to be much better than mine. In my time in reviewing this request, I tried to get some of that information out. This is the best I could come up with, and I've listed some of these roads, but that's the information that I've got.
I think you're getting into the specifics of a private driveway versus private road, number of lots, the size of this development, and all the other things. We could pull up 5.22 and look, but I did chat with a couple previous planning commissioners that were around, and all of their recollections on all of these were pre-change in the ordinance. And I do know that when we've dealt with, you mentioned the subdivision off of Maxfield, Woods Edge.
Yeah.
Woods Edge. Woods Edge was right at where Maxfield went from pavement to gravel.
Right.
And they had to have their access on the pavement. And so they're so many hundreds of feet before it flipped to gravel. Plus they had a curve in the road. I should mention that. That wasn't the only reason. But do you have any comments to the paving comment or requirement?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, obviously, for a road that has less than 200 vehicles a day, paving a third of a mile of road is a burden on 27 lots, without a doubt.
Right.
There's no question about that. And I don't know, I mean, the ordinance does talk about developments. It does talk about paved roads. I've looked at it and read this 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure that it's that clear. It does say all roads in the subdivision or condominium shall have access routes shall connect with publicly dedicated hard surface roads. There's no definition to access route, but what's interesting about that is if you look at sentences 2 and 3, it talks about developments in the MR, multiple family, in the OS office service districts that specifically say that they have to have access from a hard surface road. It doesn't use the term access route, which I'm not quite sure what that refers to. And then subparagraph 3, again, talks about developments in the NSC zoning, service commercial. It talks about general commercial developments. It talks about research development park. It talks about light industrial. It talks about industrial. And again, under that paragraph, it does specifically say that the development must provide hard surface access to a public primary or secondary hard surface road. So I don't know that the language is, and I don't know how it's been interpreted in the past, but I do question, whether or not that was the intent for these types of developments in rural areas off of gravel roads. So I think we would like to ask, if that could be revisited, because I don't think it's very specific.
I would say that the Planning Commission could, if you want to make an interpretation of that, if you want, I can pull up that language to look at. That'd be about as far as I think you guys at the Planning Commission could go with it.
Well, I'm just going by having also spoken with some of the people. We've got subdivisions, and I certainly was not around at the time of the development of like a San Marino, where they have paved access out on 59, but they have gravel access out the back. And I know there has for years been interpretations and opinions in Chuckers Cove that, Bergen Road should have been paved. And we can take a look at the wording. Through all the years here, it's been pretty much stated they're coming off of paved roads. So if you'd like, we could pull the wording up and take a look.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be prepared to make a determination tonight,
well, you can,
though. I mean, that's a big deal if you ask me.
Well, we can take a look at the wording and at least...
Yeah.
It's very short. It's right there because I had read it. It's paragraph 1.
Right there.
It's just says all roads in a subdivision or condominium development shall be hard surfaced. All access routes shall connect with publicly dedicated hard surface roads. So I appreciate paragraph 2 and 3, but I read number 1 and seem to grab this development.
It says shall twice.
If you'd like, we can, I don't know where we'll go with that, but that's how I had read it.
Yeah, I would have to agree then.
I agree. I think that was always the intent.
So I guess we'll just have to make that note. All right. So I am on any other questions or comments on that? Did I see a nod of your head, Tom? That you're in agreement with that or not?
In agreement, yes.
Okay. All right. We're at private roads. Open ditch system, 20-foot, 2-foot road surface, 4-foot shoulder, 66-foot easement. All is in compliance with the ordinance, Troy. And is there any other comment on that? We'll get to the secondary access in a moment.
Well, just the, I guess the length.
Well, yeah, that's where we're going right now.
I'll wait till, the width and how it's constructed, yes.
All right. They also require secondary access beyond 600 feet. They've proposed the emergency access. That has been approved in many cases in the past. Woods Edge has that. I believe the development that Mr. Lansing is currently working on behind the Venture Church has that. Meadowview Estates has that. And their roads are longer than this in Meadowview. So the method of the secondary access with the gate has been used 3 off the top of my head cases. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes, I don't have a problem.
For the public's benefit, I don't believe the easement on that's going to be wide enough to make it a road, at least not right now. So those that were concerned that it was going to have houses along it, not without some substantial changes, but as it's presented today, that could not happen.
So if I can, I'd like to comment. A gentleman spoke that owns this piece right here, Mr. George, I believe that's his name. He also came in to the office to speak with me the other day. Might have been yesterday. Heck, it could have even been today. He showed me a survey that has been recorded that encompassed this property and this property and this property, as well as the 5-acre piece that Mr. Lansing has purchased. And on that survey, there's an easement that kind of straddles this property line, and it creates a little cul-de-sac bulb in this location here. And Mr. George had asked, if this is going to be constructed solely on this side, how would he have access to it? How would he get out? He had a number of questions. I certainly encouraged him to speak with Mr. Lansing. Maybe this drive could, instead of being solely on this property, the two of them could agree, split costs, or come to some agreement and maybe have it straddle on here. And if that were the case, maybe instead of the gate being over here, maybe it would make sense to put the gate over here. Now, I just learned tonight that the applicant is suggesting that this road could become available to Mr. George. The only reason I'm bringing this up is depending on where this goes, maybe this option of where the gate is located, if this road is to be used as access here, maybe the location of the gate could be altered. And I just want to throw that out there for the Planning Commission to consider.
Any comments?
I don't think there's any objection to either of those. As far as access to the road that borders this property line, the zoning ordinance, I forget what, it's page 560 something, but it specifically, addresses a road that's only loaded on one side adjacent to a property. It does specifically say in there that the adjoining property owners, upon payment of a proportionate share of construction and maintenance costs, would have access to that. It doesn't really define what that is. Maybe it would be more conducive to, have access from the emergency access aisle and move that gate back so that there's never an issue with that. And I think Mr. Lansing would be open to that option as well.
Okay. Would that work with you guys? Okay. Let's talk about the shared driveway real quick. Did you have any feedback or comment on they wanted to make sure the shared driveway got put in?
Yes, the plan is to build the shared driveways at the same time that the road is built.
Okay.
Yeah, with paving.
Yep. Questions on that? Okay. Utilities, we've already talked. Private wells and septic systems on site. Impact assessment. Of course, your report states certain things. We've heard different things this evening. Do you have anything that you'd like to add beyond what you've already stated?
No, I don't think so. I just would like to state that the impact assessment is not an environmental assessment. I mean, there is a big difference between the two. The ordinance specifically asks for certain impacts on the development. Again, it's not a full-blown environmental assessment, which my understanding is the township does not require, at least for this particular project.
Comments, questions on that right now?
No.
Landscaping and screening, they are meeting all of the requirements, but Sue, I'd like to turn it over to you if you had any comments on the landscaping overall or specific points you'd like to bring up.
I think we'll get to them later when we get to the detention and retention.
You can cover that now if you'd like.
Now?
You can just do all of it.
Do all
of the landscaping.
So it's kind of a very preliminary plan. I know it will be developed further.
Right.
I do recommend, per our ordinance, that you do get a professional landscape designer to help you with it. I can see right now, just looking at the plans that were chosen, we don't have full names. The layout is not meeting the intent of our ordinance. An example would be out at the retaining ponds. They're supposed to be as natural as we can make it, and we've been hearing that all night about how this site, we want to be so sensitive. And right now, just the layout of the plantings are very engineered, not sympathetic. As you guys mentioned, numerous, even on my property too, the deer are going to come through there, and we want to make sure that the plantings are, conducive to not being eaten by the deer. Quite a few of those that you selected are going to last about 2 seconds. So I just think it needs another round as a whole at another level that we'll get to. The median island coming in, you're meeting the ordinance, but there's some shrubs out there, and then there's no definition of what the ground plane will be. So I want to make sure that what happens is as sensitively done in the keeping of the site, and I just want to go through another round in the future.
Okay. Any other comments on landscaping? All right, we're at the bottom of page 8 almost. We're at exterior lighting. You certainly have brought that up. It was brought up. Hartland Township DPW review. Questions, comments, anything about any comments that have been made by DPW or Hubble-Roth and Clark, township engineers? No.
I saw a comment, something about the treatment of those detention ponds. I thought I saw they're also asking for a forebay for silt collection. Did you see those comments?
I did see that. Generally, what we do on these ponds, and we haven't really designed them yet. I mean, they're rough ponds, rough-sized. Mm-hmm. We like to make these wet ponds instead of a forebay, similar to what we did at Woods Edge, where there's some standing water in. That acts as it's much more conducive to treatment than a forebay is, in my opinion. Right. That's the approach we've taken in other developments in the township. We can work through that when we get to construction plans, but that would certainly be the approach we'd like to take with it.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on that. I just want to make sure, again, that the handling of the water, especially, the oils coming off the road and all of it, we just really want to make sure it's done as sensitively as we can do.
Yep. They pass through the same medium at the outlet pipe before they're released to the wetland. But again, certain areas require wet ponds, if you can do it. Being along the Parshallville Pond in the wetlands, it gives us a perfect opportunity to have a wet pond in these locations, and again, that would be our preference. That has that vegetation
kind of that sounds good. I just want to make sure, everyone.
Yep, they grow cattails in them. They're great, for filters. Yes, absolutely.
Deerfield Township or Hartland Deerfield Fire Authority letter. No comments on that. For those that were wondering about the emergency access, this is a private road. The fire department does require that to be kept clear. The ones that I'm familiar with are typically built with a base to handle the truck. Right. Quite often you see grass over them. I mean, you don't even realize that they're there. And then they're plowed in the winter when your normal snowplow contractor takes care of the roads and probably occasionally have to be mowed. Are there any other questions or comments for the applicant right now? I have one for Troy, but I want to make sure we've got it all.
Yeah, I've got some general comments or questions here. I guess I just wanted to understand, when did you take ownership of these properties? Have you been acquiring them over the last few years, or what's the story there?
About 2 years now.
About 2 years? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then they're going to be all custom homes, or do you have a floor plan?
They'll be all custom. I'm the developer. I'm the contractor that will do the development work. So as far as burying stuff and not having supervision, that's all going to be with me.
Gotcha.
We're also going to be the builder too. So we're going to carry this all the way from the way it looks now to when we're done.
Right. And then I guess I got some general questions on, I guess, for the whole development. And now you guys were saying that this property was perked when it was originally preliminarily approved. Do those perks still hold now? I'm not even sure. I know it's not part of our purview, but I mean, just wondering, where does that? Do you understand how that works with the county?
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, the perks that were done back first go around are still approved.
Yeah.
The difference is the county requires 2 perks per lot now instead of 1.
Okay.
If we were to keep those locations, we would even have to go back and do another hole at that spot. But again, like I discussed, it's going to be our preference to move those septics up to the road. So we would have to have 2 perk holes per those new locations.
Gotcha. So, and then I just want to touch on the riparian rights too. I know you mentioned that none of these lots will have riparian rights to this pond.
Well, we're not proposing any boat access, any launch sites. So, I mean, obviously there is riparian rights that come with these lots. The lots that front the lake would have, whatever riparian rights are allowed by township, state, and federal ordinances.
Okay.
We're not proposing anything. We're not keyholing anything. We're not asking for, an area so that non-access people can launch into the pond. It's strictly whatever riparian rights that those lakefront owners have.
So there's nothing saying that, as far as, well, I guess I'm asking, is there anything saying that they cannot put a dock or a boat, launch a boat there? I mean, do other homeowners around the pond have those rights?
My understanding is, and I'm not that familiar with the pond, but my understanding is that there's not a boat launch on the pond. And I also understand that there is a couple pontoons with electric motors. Now, again, that's not from my personal experience. That's just what I've heard. I don't know how they get them in and out of the water.
Do we understand that at all? I'm not familiar with how. I've seen boats on the pond myself, but I just figured that the homeowners had the riparian rights to that. But and it sounds like if others do, then these homeowners might as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess another question is there a homeowners association on this pond? I mean, I hear a lot of people that live close to it or around it, with concerns about access to the lake. But do we know can anybody answer that? Is there a homeowners association that controls access or the maintenance of the property or anything like that? Man, I would really suggest that somebody organize that then. And this might be a good opportunity to do that. So, and maybe Mr. Lansing can help with that. He might be conducive. I don't know. Might be a good idea. So, those are the only questions or comments I had right now. So.
I guess I'd ask one. I cannot recall if it was your development behind Venture Church or the previous plan. Do you have a conservation easement on that at all?
We do.
Have you considered anything along the lines of that, particularly along the waterfront for some meandering distance, whatever that would be defined, that we could maybe know that property owner would not go in there, at least to not get in trouble, and clear it?
I'm working with Eleanor and her group in order to see some options with that. I did explain to them that there are some natural boundaries that are going to protect the water's edge, such as the wetland delineation, that we're not going to be able to, no one's going to be able to go in and clear unless they violate the law. So there are some natural buffers that are already there. The area that buffer is the smallest is at the area where it's the steepest, which is the area in which it's probably least likely to happen. So I think that there's already some natural buffers in there, but we are talking about the option for that.
Okay. Do you have any questions, Mike or Tom? Sue?
No, I don't think I have any additional at this point.
Yeah, just a question regarding the water table. So did you make mention of a study that was done back in the late 90s or 2000 regarding wells?
Correct, yes. Yep.
Okay, just
there was a hydro report done.
Pond.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. There was a comment about a pond and the concern that lake, water levels could go down on their pond. So that study's been done?
Correct, yeah.
All right. And so just a comment where Jeff was, I think, in regards to the association and your lake. If you're having troubles with the lake being choked out with weeds, I'm curious why it's so shallow. Is the water level going down? But maybe something like that could help you keep the lake cleaner, if you did organize.
I guess I have a question for Troy for everybody's benefit here. So we have a two-step process for this approval. Each step requires the applicant to come to the Planning Commission, the board, and then Planning Commission and board. Are there changes to the site plan to be seen between the first step with the Planning Commission and the second step?
I guess that's if that's what if the Planning Commission wants to see changes to this plan, you have two options. One, you can say make those changes and come back to us. We're not recommending anything until we see that plan. That's one option. Or two, you can say, make these changes to the plan. When you come back to, we'll recommend approval, and when you come back for the final step, we want to see the plan then. I think the Planning Commission would have, the ordinance doesn't specify that clearly, so in my opinion, you would have that option to do either of those. And I'll throw out a third one. If you see something else, I might be amenable to that too.
The reason I ask it, let's take, for example, Sue's comment on the landscaping. How would that take place? Do you have to send them back with nothing tonight to fix the landscaping, or can you say it's okay, but we want to see the fixed landscaping at the next step?
I guess that would be up to you on the Planning Commission. How would you want to handle it? Would you want to tell the applicant, we're going to postpone or table this meeting tonight, go make those changes to the landscape plan, when you're ready, come back, and we'll continue where we've left off tonight? Or would you want to recommend approval with them providing a landscape plan for the next time you hear it? Obviously, if you're going to recommend denial, it's not worth them modifying the landscape plan for it. So.
Any other questions? And where?
I'll just make a comment, though. I do see a couple of big issues that we might want to send them back with before we recommend approval. And one of them is paving Parshallville Road. The other one is, Larry, what you mentioned earlier, conservation easement. I think that would go a long way to alleviate some of my concerns and some of the concerns of the public here tonight. Those couple of things right there, I think that we would probably, in my opinion, recommend to not make a decision tonight and send them back to the drawing table here.
Are there any other comments then to that?
No, my comments would be the same as Jeff's, though.
So if you send them out of here this evening and they bring back a conservation easement and a pavement of Parshallville Road from the requirement down to the south, and they fix the landscaping plan, are you telling them that you're going to look favorable on their plan at that point?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I just want to see some more sensitivity in all those dimensions.
Yeah. Same thing.
Mike?
Well, I definitely want to see the same information, but I'm of the opinion that at this point it is a preliminary, and we could certainly ensure that those updates and inclusions were all handled in the next site review, as we got more definition of the actual build site and et cetera. Some of the landscape information is going to be determined by that. So I'm not necessarily proposing that we table this proposal, waiting for the updates. The way we've been done on the board.
Troy, can we withhold final approval if we're not satisfied with what they come back with if we give them preliminary tonight?
Yeah, you could. The ordinance doesn't specify that clearly when you grant preliminary approval. You're granting certain things. It just outlines, here's the process, two-step process. It doesn't even say what parts have to occur in preliminary and what parts have to occur. I think it's just past practice to treat it like the plan development, where you're looking at the site plan now, and then the final is more the legal documents, the master deed, and the restrictive covenants that apply. But this provision does not specify it like that. So you have that flexibility, but you can also do what the members have said, just postpone or table it until you see the plan and/or documents that you like. And the other one was the paving of Parshallville Road, and maybe further discussion on that.
Well, I could fall either way on this one. If you're inclined to be satisfied with the topics that we just talked about, the road, the landscaping, the conservation easement, you would bring him back for preliminary and then send him back to get a final. Whereas if you're inclined to be satisfied with it, and if he doesn't meet it, don't give him the final. He can either do this in 2 trips to the Planning Commission, or 3, or 4, depending on how good you are at it. I might sway a little bit to just go ahead. If you're inclined to say these are the things we want to see on the final, get it right, and you can get your final in 1 trip in and give him the preliminary this evening, because that allows him to feel confident that that's going to happen. It also allows him to move on to the board that much quicker, which is his next step after here.
Well, I guess I have one further question then to help me with that. Do we know of a nesting bald eagle on the property, or is it just a visiting bald eagle?
Bald eagle is there all the time.
I have not seen a nest.
Okay.
And I've been on the property a lot. And
right. I know it's probably frequented by the osprey quite a bit, because I see them nesting on all the cell towers, but so really, that's where birds are? I didn't realize. I thought they were swimming around. That's funny. I was wondering if there was a nesting bird there or if it was a visiting bird, because I know they're few and far between. I know we've got a lot of osprey in the neighborhood, but I've never seen a bald eagle, so I'm just wondering.
Okay.
But I guess I would like to say that I would like to review the impact assessment a bit further. So that's another reason why I think that we shouldn't send them out of here today with preliminary approval. In the past, like Troy said, we've treated preliminary like just go back and dot your I's and cross your T's, and everything else looks good. But I think there's some major hitters here that need some review, both by us and by the development or the developer. So that's why I'm recommending that.
Okay. So what would you like to do tonight? Tom?
So if the items that were noted by Mike are agreed to be taken care of, then I would be willing to approve tonight.
To your satisfaction when they come back?
Correct.
Mike, are you still of the same opinion?
Yes.
So I hate to throw this out here, but we didn't cover the part about, and Troy, you'll have to explain this, an environmental impact statement. It sounds like sometimes in the past, the Planning Commission has asked for that to happen. And I don't really know when we're supposed to ask that or not. I don't know if this is a case where we should have that to study. I don't know. But at least I want to put that on the table to talk about.
Okay.
If we just let that go by, or what do we do?
So the ordinance doesn't identify certain elements that, if exist, an environmental impact statement is required. Mm-hmm. The ordinance just says this impact statement is what is needed. The applicant has done that. Mm-hmm. That's more of a discretionary call at the Planning Commission as to when you feel that there's enough on the property to warrant doing something like that. I'll leave it up to you. There's no standard. I can't point to a standard that says when these things occur, then you can require it, and unless these occur, you can't require it. It doesn't get into that kind of specific detail.
Right. So I guess I'm turning it back to us after hearing history and all these things that everyone's brought up to us. Is that something we think we should examine further? I know that, you gave us some maps, very large-scale maps, that there isn't any oak savanna, there isn't this or that. But do we need to examine it further, I guess, is the question. Is this a case where we should ask for that? I mean, that's a big deal. I get it. I just want to put it out there to all of us.
So I guess if that's your thoughts, my comments on that are if you could give as clear of direction as possible to the applicants as to what are the items that you want to have examined, and then 2, what is it with this information, what do you anticipate you're going to do with this information with regard to this development?
Right.
If we're just requiring it for the sake of getting it and then putting it, and then we don't do anything with it, that just costs extra money.
Yeah, and time, all of it.
So my thoughts are, what is it that you would like to see the developer get, and then how do you think that's going to be used, and what ways do you think you're going to use it? And you don't have to know, because sometimes you don't know until you know what information's there, but at least if you're thinking that we need to do it, then there must be some thought as to how this is going to impact your decision and what you might do with that information as it relates to this project.
Right. So an example would be, again, the oak savanna. I don't know if that's something that we have a responsibility to protect, because it's only so much is left. That's one of them that they brought out there. The other is the bald eagle and the very severe slopes and, getting into the pond and the effect in this pond that this development's going to do. I know that all the properties around the pond are affecting it. I know ponds over time fill up with silt. That's just a natural process. But I don't know, with all these concerns and hearing of the past, if we need to study it any further to see how the development is laid out, how there's protection, little idiosyncrasies that maybe it's going to direct us, little things could be done in addition. I don't know. I just feel obligated to bring it up.
Yep. No, I agree with you. My big concern is with phosphates, right? And that's the big concern with lakes. And we've already identified that there's going to be some language, hopefully in the master deed when you come back next time, that's going to eliminate that. With this particular body of water, I think that the biggest impact is going to be the upstream golf course, and we're not even mentioning that today. And the amount of phosphates and other things that are coming into that body of water from there is going to greatly outweigh anything that these homeowners are going to do, in my opinion. So, and we've already talked about access through the swampy areas are going to be greatly limited by state law anyway. So, an environmental impact study to me is not, I don't know if it's necessary at this point, but the general impact study, I just haven't had a chance to review quite as well as I wanted to. That's what I'm saying. That's part of my reasoning to table this tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to cover it amongst all of us and just, everyone make a comment about it.
Any comments down there? Any more? Okay. So what would you like to do this evening? Would you like to send them back and have them come back for a second round at the preliminary with the items discussed, or do you want to give them the preliminary approval and deal with the details to the plans before you grant final?
Well, I'm all right with laying out the list of the things we described, giving him a preliminary approval based on that he has to come back with those items covered.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're not going to move on to a final approval.
Okay.
I am also, but I just am concerned, as Troy said, is if there's one of those things, one of the requirements, environmental impact study, if that's the case, they don't. Good, it's not.
No, it's not. After our discussion, nobody's.
Good. Good.
Okay, Mike?
No, I'm
all right, well, if you're so inclined, I think there's there is a motion on the bottom of packet page 9, or not at the bottom, towards the top. You need to make sure that you include everything in that you're looking for this evening.
I'll try, but you guys help me, if I've missed anything.
Okay.
Usually we have Keith, who's not here, do this. So we recommend the following motion, or the Planning Commission recommends approval of the preliminary approval of Site Plan 17-006, a request to develop a 27-unit site condominium, Miller's Knoll, to be located at Parshallville Road, north of Clyde Road. Approval is subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall adequately address the outstanding items noted in the Planning Department's memorandum dated July 20th, 2017. The Planning Commission to determine whether the length of the proposed, am I doing this
We're
wrong?
accepting that.
We're
so-
accepting that the length of the road is in excess of the 600 feet, and that's acceptable. We decided that we do not need the interior sidewalk. Let's see, the Planning Commission to determine whether it is acceptable for the proposed private road to connect to a gravel road. We've asked that you come back that Parsheville Road be paved. So we'd like to see that on the next plan. Applicant complies with the requirements of the Departments of Public Works Director, Township Engineering Consultant, Hartfield Fire Authority. I'd mentioned about that the Township Engineer had asked for those silt forebays, but you mentioned about the wet. So we'd like to see some more information on that, just so we can see that it's very sensitively done. Other conditions, and so other things we talked about were to update the landscape plan. So the conservation easement, we'd like to see a conservation easement description in some way to protect around the shore of the pond. We did discuss there's an option of potentially looking at where you place your gate, your emergency access. I don't know if we have to note that, but we're leaving that open on that emergency drive.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Conservation, landscaping, and paved road were the three that I had.
We have them. So.
Okay. All right, so
I'll
that's
support
the motion.
We have a motion to recommend approval for a preliminary approval for site plan application number 17-006, the Miller's Knoll development, from Commissioner with conditions from Commissioner Grissom, a second from Commissioner Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Let the record show that Commissioner Newsom voted nay. Okay, so you know what you got to do.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you. Thanks. Okay, we'll give them a minute just to clear the table there, and we'll get on with our next application. All right, next up is item 6B. This is site plan application number 17-010, Fox Ridge/Hunters Ridge. We'll kind of follow the same format. In a moment, I'll turn the floor over to our planning director, Troy Langer. He'll introduce the project. We'll have the applicant introduce themselves and the project, and then we'll go back to the Planning Commission, the planner, and the applicant. But we'll allow a few people to get out of the room here real quick.
Okay. Yep. Right down the center.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thanks. We're in the middle of our meeting. We're in the middle of our meeting here at the moment. Great. Okay.
Sure.
Great. Thank you very much.
Make sure on the final.
If we could, we're in the middle of our meeting this evening. If you wish to converse, could you please take your conversation out to the hallway? Okay. All right. All right, we're just trying to quiet it down.
That's your leisure. Thank you.
Hey, Troy, could we just close those doors? That might be best. Well, it looks like you were outnumbered tonight. All right. I'm going to repeat what I said because I'm not sure how much anybody heard that. We are on item 6B, site plan application number 17-010 Fox Ridge, Hunters Ridge. And basically we'll follow the same format. We'll turn it over to our planning director who can introduce the project. We'll turn it over to the applicant for anything they'd like to add. Then we'll do our conversation. We have a site plan review letter from our staff just like we had on the other project. So with that, what I'll do is I'd like to turn the floor over to Troy, and it's all yours.
Okay. Thank you. I'll start with a general description of where the property is located, just so everybody is familiar. This being 23 going north and south, this being 59 going east and west, and then this being old US 23 here. There's a Kroger grocery store and a Target retail store, and then this is the subject property, commonly referred to as Fox Ridge. There are 6 residential buildings in this development right now, the 7th building being a common building for the pool area here. This development that you see in this aerial was part of a development project that received approval in 2004, and at that time it encompassed all of the land somewhat around here. You can see some of the roads have been constructed all the way back through to this cul-de-sac, and then even some of this north-south road over here. What the applicant is proposing to do is essentially build that out to the plan that was approved back in 2004. Without getting into too much of the history, essentially this project started and stopped, and the ownership of it through a process changed, and now the current applicant owns the remainder portion of this development, and they have submitted essentially the 2004 site plans for approval. There's one change to that, and that would relate to this building in this area here. The original plan showed this as a 12-unit building. I'll zoom in if I can here. Trying to zoom in on just this building. The only reason I'm zooming in on this one is this is the only change from the 2004 plan. This building has attached garages. You can see over here are a couple attached garages, so to access them you would come into a drive area and then you'd come into the garage as kind of a side load in this location. And this building, when it was approved, extended over to this area, and the garages over here would have required coming in on an access drive here and then entering in the garages here. Well, this is now is a property line, and on the east side is Fox Ridge, and on the west side is Hunters Ridge. And the two of them could not reach an agreement for access, so the applicant has modified this building to eliminate that portion of it and construct a smaller building in this location. And then the landscape plan is effectively the same landscape plan that was approved as part of the PD from 2004, again with the change of the landscape in this area here. So the development, as it was approved, it was a planned development that established somewhat the standards that apply here. The site plan for this has expired. It requires to be reapproved by the Planning Commission, and just the Planning Commission, and he's applied to essentially obtain approval to construct the project that had been previously approved. Other than that change that I focused on, the plan is the same. The buildings would look the same. It would have the same architecture, same lighting, and so forth. And with that, I'll leave it open for any questions or comments that you might have.
Okay. I'd like to turn it over to the applicant. If you'd like to introduce yourself, we're going to need you to grab one of those mics.
If it squeals, I apologize.
Yeah, well, we broadcast across the world on the internet, and we have viewers in anywhere from California to London this evening.
How's that? Is that okay? Can everybody hear me okay?
Can you guys hear him okay out there? If you can hear him, I think they can hear him at home.
Fantastic. My name is Mario Izzy. I'm with MJC Homes. We're at 46600 Romeo Plank in Macomb Township. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Langer for his time. We've had the privilege to meet with him on a preliminary basis. Also, you as well, Mr. Fox. We want to thank you for your time, and thank you for taking our application this evening. I don't think I can expand any more on the introduction. I think this is a unique development in that we're asking for a renewal, essentially. The utilities are already done. How many times did the development come to you asking for approval where the utilities are already in, the road is already paved? I've heard some of the earlier comments during the public comment phase. If we can address those towards the end of, I guess, this chapter of the evening, and maybe defer to the Planning Commission's report and go through those item by item. I generally agree with the report. There's a few items that I'd just like to get clarification on and put on the public record. And then, like I suggested, if we could maybe get to some of the public comment, some of the particulars that they want to have addressed as well. So
Sure.
we can have a good compromise this evening, please.
That would be great.
Okay. With that, I'll defer back to you.
All right.
Thank you,
You're welcome. So what we have in front of us is a July 20th, 2017 staff memo or in regards to the particular development. We're going to need to start on the probably the middle of packet page number 42, because the beginning of it's a little bit of the history, which we've already heard. And I just want to, under plan development procedures, I just want everybody to understand this is also going to take a multi-meeting approval process. The Planning Commission has the responsibility to approve the site plan. So what you see on the screen. The Planning Commission, and the second step, will recommend the approval of the PD amendments, the legal document. The Township Board will approve those, so we would be a recommending body to the board for the actual agreement itself. So the site plan will be approved or not, or be the responsibility for approval falls here. The PD agreement, we are just a recommending body to the board. So there will be multiple meetings after this evening, or more meetings after tonight, no matter what happens. So let's move on to page 43, because that was really what I wanted to get into. And we are going to find a lot of this is, since this is a renewal, everything's probably going to comply, but we do want to cover it. Parking, they are meeting all the parking requirements as you would anticipate, since this is just a renewal of a site plan that we already have. It's been stated under building elevations that they're going to keep the continuity and the consistency of the project as it was initially intended by using the same products, colors, and architectural plans that were originally approved in the Fox Ridge PD. I think they're looking for as much of a seamless transition between the two as they can get. Landscaping, it continues to be the same. We're really not looking at changing that. I don't know if you have any comments, Sue, but for the most part it is the plan. The site lighting and everything will remain the same. And the density is going down, as Troy mentioned, just by the reduction of one building being cut in half from a 12-unit to a 6-unit building. There are no changes in the open space. Troy, I guess we want to talk about the phasing, because we're not going to actually define it. It's going to be a little more free-flowing. Is that what we're talking about here?
The applicant has indicated to us that they intend to construct these building or so at a time. They're not going to be coming in and starting 5, 6, 7 of these buildings at one time. and they're going to be relying on the cash flow of the sale of the units as they build them to kind of invest to construct the future buildings. So they're not looking to phase this in the traditional sense as it maybe was originally. You can certainly ask them where do they intend to start, what's their plan to construct it, but I don't know what their timetable is, but just based on the conversations I've had with them, this may take some time to build this out to what you see right here in front of you.
Okay.
When I say some time, I don't have a specific time, but just to let you know.
Yeah. Anything to add to that? I think that's pretty close to what you've told us.
Yes, it's a fair question, and I think the public would want to know as well, our neighbors. Obviously, we would love to sell these all an hour ago and get them built. This is what we do. We're finishers. We came in, we finished some of the existing buildings that were there. As far as what the market will bear, what it will bring in the future, none of us can predict that, but we feel pretty good where we're at right now. We feel there is a pent-up demand for this product, and we feel strongly we want to invest here. As far as the buildings going forward, just looking at the plan, building number 29, it's a sixplex building. That would be our first building. It's a single-story.
You want one of these? If they work?
It would. The back of the building would be toward old U.S. Route 23. It's at the east of the
Tom,
site.
can you see 29 better than I?
Yes, sir, right there.
Oh, okay.
29.
So
That would be that building along with the sixplex two-story building, sort of the custom hybrid building.
This one?
Yes, sir. Those two, absolutely for sure, what we would start with. Depending on our financing and our lending, we may even package up and do the next building, number 2, which is another 12-plex building.
There?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mario? Was it?
Yes, sir.
Are you going to start with, I'm sorry, was it 1? Was it, it was 29?
1, 2, and 29.
29, so that'll be our single-story product that we can offer with 2 model units inside that building, and then the sixplex two-story building, building number 1, the hybrid building, that one is a definite first start, so that we can transition into the development and work logically from east to west.
Okay. I am now turned to page 45. We're on the PD amendment. Do you have any comments specifically you want to bring up about that?
Specifically, no. All I can offer, sir, is that this afternoon we did receive some revisions that were made by our counsel, our attorney. There were some typos. There were some miscalculations on the unit count. We did receive those revisions. I resubmitted those back electronically to Mr. Langer. I understand there's no way they could have been reviewed in time for this evening. The original version was sent to the Homeowners Association for their review and for their comment. Obviously, we have to go before the Board of Trustees, I believe with your recommendation and the Township Attorney's comments, to go before the Board to get their ultimate approval for that. Nothing specific, but I expect that we'll get some comments back from the Township Council in that document. I think probably the biggest issue is going to be the timetable, the schedule, the phasing. I wish I could offer you a better solution. I don't know how to predict what the market is going to do. All I can offer is that we're real estate developers, we're builders. In order to keep our people working, we need to sell units. So we want to build them as safely, as soundly, as marketable as we possibly can.
Do you typically believe that developments like this, that you start at one end and work to the other, or do you see this as a patchwork?
I think this, because the uniqueness of the existing infrastructure, will just logically go down. Because there are sixplex units, building number 8, 9, and 10. Well, 10 is a fourplex, so that's kind of a hybrid of the 6. But building 8, 9, and 10 would logically flow after the single-story building number 29.
Okay.
So we'll just kind of work in transition. It would be silly for me to come and engineer the balance of what we're calling Crossview Trail, get that engineered, get it permitted, build that, when I already have a road existing that allows me the flexibility to do 12-plex units and the 6-plex units as well. So we're going to try to get that done as soon as we can.
Okay. No other zoning requirements right at the moment. Any comments on the Township DPW Director's letter? Or
I did have a couple clarifications on that. Actually, just one. Item number 7, if we're looking at the same, a note stating all existing utility infrastructure within the development envelope will be required to be upgraded to the current design and engineering standards. It's kind of open-ended. I don't know if the intent of this was to say, hey, if there's water main that maybe doesn't meet existing engineering standards, I have to go in and remove it and get a new MDEQ permit and replace it. I don't think that was the intention here. Certainly, if we need to add a gate well or there's mention of an observation manhole, a monitoring manhole, I think that's reasonable to request at this time. But I would just be opposed to any complete removal of the entire infrastructure system that's there. I wouldn't want to jeopardize the water main that's there or the existing utilities for the residents that are there. So I'm not opposed to adding reasonable requests, a hydrant possibly, if the ordinance has changed. I think that's reasonable. But going in and ripping up sanitary sewer, water main, that sort of thing. So that was one of the items that I was just looking for some clarification on.
Did he mention anything to you about what he meant?
No, and I can understand his concerns.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I'm not the guy to comment too much on that stuff. But to be honest with you, if there's a problem with the water main, I'm not sure what the Planning Commission can even do about that.
Right.
So,
we can make a motion contingent upon agreeing with it, and if you dispute it, your dispute doesn't come here. Right. Is what he's saying.
Understood. And maybe if I.
Yep. Go ahead. Yep.
And maybe all 7 comments were intended to apply more towards this future phase that hasn't even been engineered yet. So I just want to make sure where I stand here before I agree. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously, if we're going to engineer a new site, it has to meet current engineering standards. The existing infrastructure, I didn't build it. I didn't build the road. I don't know what's there. I assume it was built according to the township standards at the time. It's been accepted. We would just like to get it done and finish it up.
Well, if a motion comes out of here this evening, it would reference that letter, and then any dispute you would have or any claim of unfairness or negotiating would have to be done with DPW.
Yes, sir. I think that's fair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Engineer's letter, fire authority, the township attorney's review letter, he had some comments in there, and then we received an additional memo from him. You probably received this one.
he did not receive that
He
one.
did not receive this one. Okay. What would you like to say about the PD agreement? And I assume we're ready to talk about some of the issues that the neighbors have brought up, unless you have something else you'd like to add, because I think that's really why they're here.
Yes. With regard to the PD agreement, we've already talked about the typos and the corrections. We've resubmitted.
Yeah.
We've talked about that going in front of the township board.
Yep.
We will also, as a courtesy, we will resubmit the newer version, the revised version, with the red line markups to the homeowners association for their review as well. I understand from the public comment that they've hired an attorney to review this document. That's great. I encourage it. What I would like to see done, if possible, is the communication from their attorney. They can certainly send it to me. I don't speak legalese, but maybe it would be better for their attorney's comments to be funneled to the township attorney. Maybe they can collaborate. The township attorney could possibly take the association's attorney's comments under consideration and see what the township can recommend back to us as a developer without putting the township in jeopardy, I guess, without any risk there. So I certainly want to keep the communication open, but I think the document needs a little bit more work as well. That's all I had as far as the PD agreement.
Okay. Well, I had a couple questions after comments were made in the call to the public here, and let's talk a little bit about the access and their desire to have their road protected. How do you?
Well, one comment that I heard earlier was a suggestion to put a secondary access out onto Old US Route 23. That would cause us to redesign the layout, but more importantly, there's an existing conservation easement to the north of these proposed units. And I believe that was one of the documents that I had to dig up and send back over to Martha and to Mr. Langer as well. So we would have to get permission from MDEQ to put another easement and pave a road through that conservation easement. Likelihood slim to none. Probably isn't going to happen.
Well, and I think there's distance requirements between driveways that I don't know you could meet.
Right. So that speaks to the additional ingress-egress, or point of ingress-egress. As far as protecting the roads, again, I've said it earlier, this is a unique situation in that the road is topped. Normally, when we do a development, we do the base course, we do the concrete curb and gutter, we leave the topping off until the very end. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. The cross-sections on these asphalt roads are normally designed considering the full section being installed. When you don't add the topping, sometimes that base course takes a little more abuse than it should, and I found myself having to make some costly repairs because I didn't have the topping on. Sometimes it works out where if we're cautious and our superintendents do what they're supposed to do, and they're more respectful of the road, that base course doesn't get beat up as bad. We do some minor repairs, we do the topping, it looks brand new, and everybody's happy. In this situation where the topping is in, I think we have to have some faith in the road design that's required by the township. I think the amount of construction traffic that we're going to have and the abuse that the road is going to take is going to be more on the curbs, jumping over the curbs with semis and equipment. I think that's where you're going to realize more of the damage to the road. As far as the asphalt getting grooved or because of heat from the tires, can it happen? Yeah, it can happen. I think ultimately, again, we have to sell units. If we don't sell units, we don't build more units. We're not going to sell units if this road doesn't look proper, if it doesn't look clean. If it looks like a minefield, I don't think anybody's going to have the confidence to build here. What I would offer as a compromise and to protect myself and maybe draw a line in the sand and set a sort of a milestone for everybody, MDOT projects, you have to painstakingly detail, videotape existing road conditions. I would offer to do that for the existing pavement. I would submit that video record to the township. You could have that. We could give a record to the homeowners association, the master association. They have that, so that in a year from now or 3 years from now, MJC's contractors that beat up the road, let's go back and look and see what the existing condition was. I think the damage to the road that we'll see is going to be at the curb and gutters that are there out in front of the units that we're going to be building, and those we have to replace those anyways, because we have to get a final inspection for the building. So the building inspector, I'm sure he's going to flag it, and if not, and if it's that unsightly, we're going to have to replace it anyways. How am I going to sell a unit if it's in a state of disrepair? So that's what I can offer. We can videotape the road. We have a record of it. I'm not aware of any existing issues with the road right now. If anybody knows of any, please tell me. I'd like to know, or maybe don't tell me, and then if they have to be repaired, you're going to ask us to repair them later. But I think we're going to videotape the road anyways, so we have a record of it.
I'm going to ask, why is this not going to be one association? Why are you dividing this up?
I believe because there's an existing Master Homeowners Association, there's an association that covers the 12-plex units, and there's another association that covers the single-story units. Those are child associations to the Master Association. This third association, we've had some meetings with the association. I want to say over the course of the last 6 months, we've talked about possibly joining and sharing in the maintenance of the pool. It is a changing facility. It's not a clubhouse, so I think this is a misnomer. That's a typo. And I wasn't there for those meetings, so I can't speak into detail, but in summary, we weren't allowed, or we were not, I guess, invited to be a part of the clubhouse or the changing facility in the pool. Maybe that's something that the existing association can sell memberships later. If they want to try to maintain this structure in the pool, I know it's going to be expensive. If they want to go forward to do that, obviously they can. I would just think that with the amount of residents that we can add, it could dramatically help to subsidize and maintain this common element. I don't know why you wouldn't want to share with that, but like I said, I wasn't involved with those meetings with the Master Association. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I believe we almost have to have this third association. It has to be separate.
Yeah. Well, you are, and since they're the current homeowners are here and you're here, I'll just speak from experience, not as the Planning Commission chair. Your life will be so much better if you all work together as one. I hear about road damage. What's going to happen, they have legal access across those roads. And I'm not speaking as a Planning Commission chair now. If you want, I'll come over to the podium. What's going to happen is you're going to fix that. And you're going to divide it amongst your 50, 60 lots. And I appreciate what happened to your association. I was on the Planning Commission when that development was approved. So I've been around a long time. And, the pool, I don't remember if the pool and the clubhouse were there. I'm guessing they were because they're there now. They were intended for all the units that are there. They were intended for the neighborhood. And I appreciate the fact that that you had to step up and the economy went south and you had $100,000+ and the pains that went into making it what it is today, and feel like it's yours and it's yours and not theirs. But what's going to happen with that road and everything else when that pool needs to have major maintenance and all the other things that go on it, and the outside of your condo units need to be taken care of because yours are now 15 years older than theirs, is you're going to foot that bill. You're going to divide that cost amongst 50 people. But if you divide it amongst 200+ people, it's a lot different. And when your dues are $200 a month because your units need repairs and theirs are 50 and they're 15 years older, who's are going to sell faster? So take it from somebody that's been there, done that, as a resident, as a homeowner. It doesn't work. It's written right now. I'm not lecturing. I'm just trying to give you the experience that I've dealt with. Working together is going to be a lot better for all of you. It was intended to be one community. And if you don't want it to be one, that's fine. But just think about beyond the fact of what's going to happen here. The cutting of a building to 6 from 12, I don't know why. Assuming because I heard we couldn't share a driveway. We're thinking too short-sighted right now. So I leave that. I don't know where all this would go if you guys were to leave here and change your minds, but it was intended to be one development. And the pool and everything else about it was intended to be shared by all. It doesn't affect me. I don't live there. I'm just thinking about your own peace in the future and the frustrations you might have.
I think we do need to think about it, though, because we're approving something right now that's landlocked and it doesn't have all the amenities that the original plan had. doesn't have access to the recreation area, doesn't have access to the pool, it doesn't have access to M50 or Old US 23 for crying out loud, except through a private road. And so we're looking at a development with 200-plus units that has to be accessed through a private road. And I don't think that's sound planning right there. So we can't separate these two into those, into a site plan and a PD agreement. We have to look at them contiguously, in my opinion. And we're really kind of hamstringing the original development to foot the cost of the maintenance of that road when there's going to be 3 times the amount of traffic that's generated that doesn't, that's not generated by them. So I am having a hard time with this. I mean, yeah, I get it. The plan's been approved. Yeah, I get it that some new developer wants to come in and build out over 10 years or whatever it is, and I appreciate that. But we got to think of what we're doing to the original homeowners in there right now. And I don't think it's fair if we approve it the way it is.
Well, see, and that's the point. I think they're doing it between them and them.
Well, it's our decision ultimately because this is what we have in front of us.
But they have legal access.
Yeah, but what we have in front of us, I think, is unfair to everyone. That's my opinion. It's unfair. So the way it looks right now, I get it. The plan's been approved. We can approve the site plan. Ain't no way that plan development agreement is going to be approved. I disagree with it 100%. 100%. This thing needs to be a contiguous development. That was the original idea. That was the original way the site plan was approved. And if we move forward any other way, I think we're doing a disservice.
I don't agree. I do agree. I don't disagree. I think it should be one development.
I believe there is language in there that requires us to cost share on any maintenance or any damage to this road long term amongst the associations.
It's more than just the road. It's a complete development. I mean, the residents of the buildings that you're going to be constructing are going to be all over the property of Fox Ridge 1 and 2. And it's not their property. They have no ownership rights. They have no maintenance rights to the shared common areas. Nothing. They're going to be all over it.
I don't know how our residents could use the pool if they're not allowed. I mean,
they're going to be all over that land. They're going to be all over it. It's the way I look at it. It needs to come back to this board or this commission as a single plan development.
Have you guys had the discussions to that? Sorry, we don't open it to the public, but have you had discussions with the homeowners association to join their association in the capacity
yes,
of? Okay, and the response is?
My understanding is the response was no.
My understanding, or were you involved in the conversations?
I can confer with my associate.
Okay,
if that's okay.
All right. Well, if she's part of the applicant, she can speak. She's
absolutely.
So we met with.
Could we get your name, by the way, and who you're with?
My name is Barbara Gates. I'm with MJC Companies.
Okay.
And I'm the community liaison person for all of the condominium associations. So we met with the boards, and they had concerns about the number of people that were going to attend the pool. They had concerns about their sense of community that they've already built up, and they didn't want us. We have to do another condominium. It has to be Hunter's Ridge because of the condominium law. We're past the 10-year point. So we wanted Hunter's Ridge to be a community within the Master Association. It was something that they did not want. They wanted to be separate from us. They wanted to have a sign, signs up to say we're separate from them. So yes, we wanted to do that, but that's not what they wanted. And they understood what the consequences were. There was discussion about the road, and we are responsible to pay a proportionate share of any of the damage or the wear and tear on the road. It is going to be a nightmare to figure it out and do it, but it can be done. So we initially met with Fox Ridge 1 Board of Directors, Fox Ridge 2 Board of Directors, and then we met with the Master Association, those 3. And then our next meeting was with just Fox Ridge 1 because that meeting was about the building and trying to have one building or trying to find out what they wanted to do, because we want to keep an open relationship with them, and this was what they wanted. So we said, okay, we're willing to do either way, but we need, our attorney said that we need 66 and 2/3 vote from each of the projects to be allowed into the master. So if we couldn't get the board of directors to be behind it, we certainly aren't going to get the rest of the community to be behind it. I mean, there's 15 people out of 54 just on the 3 boards. So, you know, our hands are kind of tied then.
Well, I'll add if there's thought that this is going to get stopped by not being part of their association, that's not going to happen. I believe strongly the one group is going to be substantially better than what is going to happen here. Because I believe life will not be as good as it will be, because nothing's going to change other than you're going to pay for your part and we're going to pay for our part.
But people get comfortable in their community, they get comfortable with their neighbors, and by opening the Master Association up to another community, they're going to have other people on the boards, and nobody likes change. And it really comes down to maybe the unknown.
Well, you have 2 things before you here. One is the site plan. The site plan is just a renewal of the old site plan, as we said in the beginning. That is a task which we are charged the responsibility to approve or deny. And then there is the PD amendment. I don't know that we can force the first group to join the new group or the first 2 to join the third. My goodness, we're neighbors.
Yeah.
We are frickin' neighbors, people. There are so many other places where we need to draw a line. But
just to let you know, I did receive the applicant's email. Unfortunately, when I don't know what time he sent it, but by the time I got it, it was very near the end of the day, and I had been in meetings, and I have not sent that off to our attorney for further review on that PD amendment. So.
I wasn't, if I may, I wasn't expecting to try to get it to you to have it reviewed tonight by any means. I just wanted to get the revisions to you so that at least we could speak to the fact that the revisions were made. A lot of the typos that were done, some of the sloppier work that was done, it was cleaned up and resubmitted. So
I don't know where everybody is. I would be comfortable approving the site plan this evening and then tabling the PD agreement.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, just based on our attorney's comments, you know, his conclusion uses the word may. That's a big red flag for me. It appears Hunters Ridge may have the right to use the common roads, parking areas, utility lines, blah, blah, blah. And when your attorney says may have the right, that's a big red flag. That's not a will or shall or can. It's a may. It's an inconclusive comment to me.
Yeah, he doesn't have it at all yet. So if you're comfortable with that, I would entertain a motion, the first motion on page 46.
I'll move to approve site plan number 17-010, a request to amend the previously approved plans for Fox Ridge Plan Development to reduce the total number of condominium units from 268 to 262 units and develop the remaining property as a multiple family condominium development to be consistent with the same design standards and site plans as were approved in the original plan development and according to the terms of the amended plan development agreement. Approval is subject to the following conditions. The applicant shall adequately address the outstanding items noted in the Planning Department's memorandum dated July 20th of 2017. The project may consist of several phases of construction. However, the project shall continue to progress in a timely manner. Should work cease for more than a period of 1 year, and an extension of time has not been requested by the developer prior to that time, the site plan approval shall be considered void. Applicant will comply with any requirements of the Department of Public Works, Director of Township of Engineering and Consultant, and Hartland Deerfield Fire Authority. Any conditions associated with the original approval shall remain valid unless specifically modified.
Support. All right, we have a motion to approve site plan application number 17-010 for Fox Ridge / Hunters Ridge from Commissioner Mitchell, a second from Commissioner Murphy. Is there any further discussion?
One question.
Absolutely.
I thought you brought up your concern about the comment about the engineering asked that all the existing infrastructure be, do we have to make any comment about that? We just leave it open that right now we're going to say complies with all the requirements?
Well, because we're not qualified to determine if he doesn't like it. He can
you're going
meet
to
with
just work that out. Okay, good.
Bob
I
West.
want to tie you into that with your concern.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Okay. Any further discussion? This is a motion to approve site plan 17-010. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. May I ask a question, please?
Absolutely.
For the PD agreement or the revisions to the PD agreement and the subsequent discussions, will we appear before this body one more time?
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets either recommended or not
the board.
recommended to the board?
Yeah.
Okay. And then one last question. Okay, so we'll prepare our architectural plans in anticipation of, because obviously I'm looking at snow flying in 16 weeks or so.
So your PD agreement will get approved. It's just you got to get some language cleaned up
Yes,
in it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so then we'll move forward with our plans then. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thanks.
And thanks, everybody, for showing up tonight. Thank you.
You've been sitting there a while. We'll let him pick his plans up, and then we'll move right to you. Yeah.
Someone in this body review the fertilizer ordinance West Bloomfield Township. Our community owns the township. Our ground superintendent help draft.
Okay.
Maybe very helpful to the
Okay. Make note of that, Troy.
I hope it doesn't come to bite me, but hey, it's good.
Good for all in the end.
For the environment.
Right. Now we're going to move on to item 6C, which is site plan application number 17-013. This is for Sam Yaldo and the AutoZone, and we'll follow the same procedure. So let's turn it over to Troy.
Okay. Thank you. The property associated with this request is located along M59, this being M59 here. It will be east of 23, which is in this area here. The area that we're looking at, I'm going to zoom in on this. Just bear with me. Is going to be this area here. This is the property here that the applicant owns, and on that property is a single retail building. I think it's currently AutoZone, and they sell auto parts and supplies. The east half, if I can call it that, of this property, it's all the same property, but the east half of it is undeveloped. To me, it looks like maybe there's some future plans there, but nothing's been approved, and it sits in an undeveloped state. There is currently, I'm going to zoom in here and just bear with me, there is an existing access point on M59 that comes onto this property, and it's like a two-track road, if you will, that goes back to I'm not sure if this is a well back here or sewer.
It was gas wells, that's what I meant.
Okay. So there's an access that goes back to property beyond the applicant's property. So there's one access drive near the eastern boundary of the applicant's property. And there's another property associated with this request, and that's this property over here. This is a office condominium development. There's 2 buildings. They have a parking lot here, and their only means of access is right over here onto M59. What the applicant is proposing to do is to essentially remove this access point and remove this access point and install a shared access point that will come in, provide access to the office condominium development, and then it will end, but in the future would connect here. I'm going to pull up their plan. Bear with me, I'm getting better at this, but maybe not as smooth as some. So this is the site plan that shows the existing. Now, it doesn't show all the sites. That's why I wanted to focus on that aerial. You can see the 2-track drive here. This is the portion to be removed. And then the office development's access point to be removed. This is the MDOT right-of-way that kind of comes right through here. So this is the plan of existing situation, although that's not really true anymore, but we'll get to that a little later. Then this is the plan that the applicant is proposing to do. This would be the new access point. It's a shared drive that would come in, provide access to the office complex to the east, and then we just end here at this point. Here's the AutoZone building, and their parking lot kind of ends. And at some point in the future, if and when this is ever developed, that could theoretically be connected and would provide a continuous connection through here without having to traverse back out to M59. I've outlined in the ordinance the authority that staff has to amend this, these type of requests. In my opinion, this exceeds any ability of staff. The site plan review by staff is just to change a little bit of the access. This is beyond what's in the MDOT right away and kind of comes out onto the site itself. So it requires Planning Commission approval. And without getting into it too much, it's fairly late. I will point out the applicant did start work. He is stopped, and he is here voluntarily requesting approval from the Planning Commission. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay. We're going to do our letter, but before we do, would you like to add anything?
The only thing that I would like to add is when I received the approval from MDOT, I popped up the champagne bottle because it really takes a lot of time to get an MDOT permit approval. And I was not aware at all that I needed to go through this process. But we're here.
We're here, so pull the mic up a little bit so everybody out in TV land can hear you.
Sure.
I cannot believe these people left with this on the agenda.
Yeah, they haven't gone far.
They're waiting out there.
I would like to make a comment about the previous developers here. I know these guys. I know this company very well. They've done thousands and thousands of condominiums. Michael Chirko is a decent human being, which is the boss, MJC. And I believe if they sit with him, he will hug them. The present association will be hugged with open arms.
Okay.
And if you have a pool, the pool is the biggest liability. Distribute that liability, spread it over. I echo what you said, believe me. But we want to go back to my issue now.
All right. We're going to take a look at this staff letter dated July 20, 2017, and we're going to start over on packet page number 129. Troy, these packets are getting awful long. We're going to start putting a limit on what you can do. So let's take a look here. Staff analysis, we see impact assessment not required, traffic generation not required, access and circulation. I think connecting parking lots in the end is a good thing. We like that. Dimensional requirements, lot size, frontage, parking lot, everything is in compliance. The not to be really dealt with at all, I guess, in terms of what it is. It's a commercial site. Under the site requirements, there's nothing required. Landscaping, what are you going to do there right now? Because it's are you going to like rough grade, finish grade around the driveway?
Yeah, I have to connect the two sidewalks.
Yeah.
And it ends at the east lawn.
Yep.
And then I will landscape that island in a decent way to make it presentable.
Okay. Okay.
The landscaping in that island is tricky. There is some provisions in the ordinance that address it, but it's completely within the MDOT right-of-way. There's also a fire hydrant in the middle of that thing. I just kind of left it at be sensitive to those issues. Just keep in mind, anything you want to put there, MDOT may have the final say and say no. So I'll leave it up to you to recommend or suggest or require whatever you might want to see there.
So, our ordinance talks about what to do with that divider median, but as you say, it's in the right-of-way with MDOT, so I guess, if you can try with them to say, here's what Hartland wants,
For
just,
sure.
I guess, keep their department,
Once
informed of what happens.
gives me what the requirements are, I'll try with them.
Yeah.
Well, it does talk about trees. I don't think we're going to get any trees in there.
I have to go low-lying.
Well, they make you have the clear vision window, so just again, kind of share it with them, that keep them informed, so be it.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, so nothing to talk about on water supply and disposal. Other requirements, Troy, HRC's got a recommendation there about an cross-access agreement.
Yeah.
You good with that, Sam?
Yeah, I have.
You got
the owner of the property to the east was here. I handed him a copy for review. Once I get it from him and we have a clear understanding of the language, we'll send it to you to give it to your lawyer.
I think that's within the conditions on the approval this evening, so he'll be required to have one. So he's working on that. DPW review, nothing. Township engineer, fire marshal, or the fire authority is saying that, hey, you're going to have to ultimately get that fire hydrant out of there.
I can't wait to develop. And I'll put two hydrants, not one.
All right.
Been sitting on it for years.
Okay. Well, that'll have to come out of there at that time, apparently. MDOT, you got the permit you need, so now I'm looking at page 131. Any questions, comments?
I do. Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Yellow.
Yes.
And it is the sidewalk that you're removing.
Yeah.
So you're cutting out this existing sidewalk and you're then re-adding, reinstalling, or are you leaving a piece behind?
We're just adding a very short piece.
Right here. Is it right here?
On the one at the, no, down, the one down. This one, I think, we're adding this piece, but there's the other one along the road.
Oh, this right here.
We've been getting people to get that out of there. I think at development time, you probably ask you to tear all that out.
To remove all that?
So,
wow, that'd be nice.
Well, my question would be, I don't know if this is your parcel or not. No?
No.
Oh, okay. So my interest is probably what you already going to know is I wonder what it would
No,
be
that's the doctor's. That's not
to
mine.
continue that
That's
sidewalk
the
across.
doctor's.
Yeah.
What we've been doing on the north side of 59, which you're aware, is we're getting the property owners to pull that sidewalk off that is adjacent to the curb and then move a sidewalk further away from the road itself.
And I already have an existing one on the vacant lot, but I need to match the grade now. I have to do some grading.
Okay.
But I was stopped.
Just because you brought it up, Troy, if anyone's ever walked on that sidewalk along the road,
I don't.
Don't you feel safe?
It is so dangerous.
I've never seen a single soul.
Well, I've run it, so you're right at this.
That's scary.
Well, it should be. It's very unsafe. Yeah. Sidebar. Yeah.
So just so we're clear, he's proposing, there's an existing asphalt sidewalk there. He's proposing to match, to connect.
But he has to fix it now.
Should I just not put it?
I doubt MDOT would let you just bust it up and leave it missing.
Well, he's got a permit, and I included in the, probably way down, I included the plans that MDOT approved that kind of showed that.
These aren't hard.
They stamped those plans approved.
Yeah.
Bear with me here. See, they have this little stamp here, approved by Patrick McMurphy, and they even, fancy enough, they tell the exact minute and date that they approved it. and they show that little connection here.
Yeah, and I'm saying for now, that's fine. When we get into development of the site next to the AutoZone, most likely we'll be coming to him to tear everything in front of that out.
So are you saying on this side in front of AutoZone, he could tear this part out? He doesn't have to do
Well,
that?
I think he needs to follow MDOT's permit and patch it right now.
Okay.
When we get to putting in, when he builds the next building or sells the property and someone develops next to AutoZone, then that will come out.
Okay.
But I don't think it's safe to leave a busted-up piece of sidewalk sitting there. Any other questions, comments for him? So you just acknowledge that fire hydrant will have to come out?
No.
Yeah, at development time.
I thought we have to add one.
Yeah,
So
but you got to
that's what
take
I
that
read.
one out.
Oh, take it out.
Oh, yeah.
And there, it was not a specific requirement you had to add one. The thought was that this fire hydrant may currently serve the office buildings and could serve the AutoZone and others, but when you relocate it, that could impact the distance. And so just to warn you that a second one might be required, but maybe not, depending on where...
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, well, no, here's what the fire marshal says. When the undeveloped land adjacent to the existing AutoZone is developed, the fire hydrant would need to be relocated so that it is not within the island of the access drive.
Oh.
So by accepting the approval of this, you're agreeing that you're going to remove that?
I will remove it. I really.
Okay, so there'll be no question about that.
Yeah, but I think it's going further and saying not only may he have to take
But
this
he's gotta
one out
add one.
and have to relocate it, depending on where it goes, he may have to install a second one, may have to install.
Right, but that one is coming out.
Okay.
Okay.
When we have a buyer or a tenant, I'll be more than happy to do whatever.
All
it
right.
takes.
Okay. So any other questions, comments on this? We have a motion on page 131, if you're so inclined.
I will move to approve site plan number 17-013, a request to modify the previously approved plans for AutoZone and Hartland Professional Center by modifying the access drive to M59 based on the submitted site plans dated May 3rd, 2016. Approval subject to the following conditions. Number one, the applicant shall adequately address the outstanding items noted in the Planning Department's memorandum dated July 20th, 2017. On the construction plan set, subject to an administrative review by the planning staff prior to issuance of a land use permit. Number two, the applicant shall comply with any requirements of the Department of Public Works Director, Township Engineering Consultant, and Hartland Deerfield Fire Authority. Number three, the applicant shall provide a cross-access agreement subject to review and approval by the Township Attorney and Planning Department. The cross-access agreement shall provide for the maintenance of the common or shared access drive and requires a cross-access drive to remain open and accessible for all patrons of both sides. The cross-access agreement shall not be modified without approval from the Township. And that's
Support.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve site plan application number 17-013 from Commissioner Newsom, a second from Commissioner Murphy. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
One more comment on paving the road from a development and connecting it to it.
You did that.
I was the first guy that was forced to do that on Clark Road.
Right.
Clark Road was not paved.
Right.
Until the township was built.
Right.
The portion that was paved was from the northern access to M59. And I was forced to do it, and I think that ordinance was done right after I had to.
Yeah.
We have a lot of history.
All right. You have a good evening. All right. Thank you very much. All right. We're at item 7, which is our call to the public. Anyone? Anybody? All we need is your name, address, and what you'd like to say.
Catherine Peters, 10250 Crosswood Trail in Fox Ridge. My only comment is with regards to why you were asking about why not we join the association. One, we were not asked them to join our association. They were asked us to join our master to get to the pool, to be able to use the pool as a selling point. I understand that this development was made. When I bought in, I was the second one to move in. I knew this development was going to be made. I knew that at that time. We closed after they left. They designed the master deed. They cut the driveway in half and gave us the right for it. The mistake they made. We agreed, we sat down with them, we talked about the smaller sixplex, which we do like, because it gave us a buffer between one and the other. The access for the pool, I'm sorry, for 10 years we've had the pool and there's only been 54 of us, we're kind of stuck with it. Do we know we have to pay the expense for that pool? Yes, we do. There's no way that they're going to help us pay for our roofs. You think a new person going in the Hunter Ridge is going to help us pay for our roofs? I wouldn't ask if I was on that side of the fence for that. So joining associations, this was made up in the beginning. We have 3 associations for 54 units because that's the way it was designed in the very beginning. All I'm asking for is that we're one to work with them. But we're worried about our roads. They're talking about building as they sell. And I get it. Who wants to build something that's going to be empty while they sit and wait for the building? But that means the entrance to Fox Ridge off of 23 for 5 years will have construction going through it. That's our problem. There is an access, and I don't know if you can bring that up, I don't know if it's allowed, the Chase Road. There's a road there that goes out past Target that was originally iffy part, whether it moved in or not. We asked them, could you get permission to use it as a construction road, just to pull in and do the construction? They said, well, we don't know, we don't own the property. I said, okay, see if you can ask. We have sat with them, and asked them these questions that you guys are thinking of with us. The answers were no. We're coming in on their road. We have access.
They never even asked. I just asked them all. They never even asked all with LLC if they could rent permission across that property. For 6 months, we didn't start this putting fences. We tried.
We tried. We sat down with them. They worked out. When they came back to us and said, hey, what if we do a 6plex? Would that help you? Because we asked for like a little bit of a buffer. We said, God, that would be great. We were happy to see that. We saw the plans. They changed the name of the road. We can't figure out why. But we were fine with that. Our problem is the construction that's coming across the road. The declaration that they sent, that our attorney, we sent to our attorney, who made notes, who sent it to their attorney and to Barb here, of the concerns that we had. They were saying we were going to be responsible for these roads. A 54 unit are going to take care of all 200 of them. Now, I realize that has to go through clarification and lawyers. That's why we have them. All we're stating is that we want you guys to please look at us. We're only 54 units. We're trying not to be the little guy. We don't want to be fighting. We know they're coming. But what we want is to be fair. We'll pay our portion. We want them to pay theirs.
Well, we don't normally respond and call to the public, so I'll make the exception to say that a lot of that's already been decided in the legal documents, and we're not going to be able to change those. So whatever the legal documents say when the development was originally designed is what it's going to be, unless the 2 parties agree to change it. We can't tell them to pay for your roads, and we can't tell you to let them use the pool, but a lot of where this is going to go is going to lie in the print that's on the pages that were signed 15 years ago. And so whatever those pages say or what it's going to be, and when I spoke to you as a resident, not as the Planning Commission chair, I'm just telling you, if you find a way to work together, your life will be better. And whether it's them or whether it's you, I was speaking to them also. But the way I'm familiar with subdivisions that have multiple associations, and the way those legal documents could be very different from what yours are. But the guy at the front of the road takes the brunt of the use and will pay the bill. But that's what I'm used to. That may not be the way your documents are written, but we can't change that. I just want to say, we don't have control over deciding whether they're going to pave your road if they damage it. That's already been decided. The lawyers are going to read those documents and determine that. I'm sure they have access. I cannot believe that there's no way they don't have access. The question is how the expenses are going to be divvied up when the damage is done. Because quite honestly, you can't build 200 condo units and not expect your road to be damaged. I just think that's going to happen. Yeah. So we don't want to, it isn't an open forum, but we do have a call to the public, so if you want to come forward, but we're not going to go back and forth because we've been here like 3.5 hours now. You're fine. This is important. We understand. All right. So what's your name again and your address?
10098 Richmond Street.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to say that I would not disagree with having one board or anything like that. I'm fully comfortable with that. It's just the pool. I mean, why they gave us one little pool with a maximum of 81 people for like 300 families is unknown to me. But right now, there's a small amount of us, and I just did the math, and it would be 252 additional families sharing their pool. And right now, it's difficult to even determine, like, we haven't made any decisions or there's no rules as far as how many guests you can have. One guest came, I don't know, last week or whatever, with 11 guests. So if you have 252 families, in addition to us, that's just them. So that's why we don't want to share the pool. I guess I just want to let that be known. It just seems reasonable to me that we would not want to do that. The rest of the stuff, I appreciate, your input. I mean, because I'm not really familiar with any of that, and I certainly don't want any problems. I just want everything to be as smooth and easy as possible. I don't know how that's going to occur, but the second thing is that, so we don't have an option for a use of a different road for the construction. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, there is an access easement, but it's going over a third party's property.
But by that 29, that building 29 off of, it's actually in the complex, but it's a different road. Is that?
29's the first building on the right. No.
That's been designated as a conservation easement and deeded to the DEQ. And
But it looked like all those other condos were over there,
Well, again, not wanting to go through the whole site plan review, but or get in a plot of back and forth, but the Livingston County Road Commission on distance of driveways, I think maybe 600 feet. So they can't be closer than, I believe, 600 feet to your driveway if they had another driveway. And they're not asking for that. They're just asking for a renewal of a pre-approved site plan. So it's kind of a whole different game.
I guess I was just trying to think of
it's not really even a new site plan. It's just a renewal of something that already went through the process, and it was decided that this one entrance was going to take care of 200 and some odd condos.
Okay. I guess that's it.
Okay. All right. Oh, absolutely.
Can I speak again, please?
You can. Give us your name and address.
10117 Ridge Run. I get what they are wanting to do, and I don't oppose it, but they're doing it the easy way. They are submitting a site plan based on this being a new development, okay? But this is already built. They haven't exhausted their efforts to provide a basic plan to determine how they're going to change the entrance to the Hunter's Ridge when we're already Fox Ridge. The distance between our driveway and the driveway going behind Kroger's, I can't believe that they don't have enough room going to the north that they could get another entrance in there. Going over the other property where they show a road there now, they're going to somehow there's got to be an easement there, because I don't think it's, how's your fire access? Who's thought about that? It's a site plan that They didn't want to spend any money to redo, to work around us. Or work. So those are my concerns. And I asked him outside, I said, did you approach the property owner to see if you could put a temporary road in there to service your construction and leave us alone? You know, they could access everything they're doing off of that. He said, no, he hasn't even asked me. So from when we originally met till today, when we voiced our concerns, they haven't listened. And it's frustrating to us as a community to just have it go on deaf ears. And then you give them site plan approval, preliminary approval, and they're all happy. They're trying to go get foundations in before fall. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Joe Swartek, 10131 Ridge Run, Hartland, Howell.
You're one of those.
Yeah, we're one of the first ones, too, that moved in the subdivision. I don't know how many more people have been there. There's a couple of folks that have been there. When we moved in, we knew that the community was going to be a large community, and we realized that up front. But we also realized that at the end of the day, that all of the little, Fox Ridge 1, Fox Ridge 2, all the future communities that are buildings that were going up, were going to feed into that master and help pay for everything. And now, we've been through one round with a builder in the whole Great Recession. We clawed our way out, and saved our community, kept things going. And we're proud of what we have there. And we're not anti-development, and I say we. Some of us in the community have concerns, but we're not anti-development. We're for them coming in. It's going to help our property values. It's a good thing. We understand they have that right to come in here. We know that they're talking about continuing their plan. But again, that plan originally had everybody contributing to that master. And I agree with you, Larry, and what you said about it's going to make everybody's life easier if we work together. And that's very true. But what the applicant's representative in the one meeting that we had with Fox Ridge 2 with her, what she communicated today was not accurate. As soon as she heard what our association fees were and the costs that we were paying and what we've been through and how we're trying to manage our expenses out there, she wanted nothing to do with us. She just shut right down. She was done. She first said, hey, we're coming in, we're going to build. We're like, okay, we get it. We understand you're coming in to build. We just want to do it equal and fair and make it a win-win for everybody. Because at the end of the day, we have to live next to these people. They're going to come in there and they're going to make their buildings, they're going to make their money, they're going to move out. But the problems that we're going to have with the different communities, if they're a different association and not part of the master, these are going to go on for years. So I like to find some kind of resolution, and I think that what Jeff said too, he's dead on target. I got to say I've got some serious concerns unless they're really going to come and sit down with us in good faith, really try to work something out. And when you hear that they haven't even talked to the neighbors who are south there about trying to get a road in, a temporary road, so that they can bring their building materials that way, that gives me pause. When you look at the materials that they've sent up to our lawyer, and it's got language in there that's just inaccurate, and they're saying things in their paperwork that says that they received permission from the community that got the votes to do something, and that's inaccurate. All these inaccuracies are giving me some real pause and some real concern, and I hope it does you too, because you're going to have to listen to us when there's a problem, right? So I would just say that our community is not anti-development as a whole, but we have some concerns, and I think that it's in the best interest of the builder, the applicant in this case, and our community to work together. I'd just like to see if there's something that you guys and the lady can help us achieve that.
Okay. Anyone else?
It's amazing that you guys have not gotten much
Well, yeah. These are special chairs. Let's see. Let's close the call to the public. Troy, do you have anything this evening?
I don't.
All right. Committee reports, anyone?